Chapter 1179. From time to time, Chen Hao's screams were mixed in with his words, as if he had been caught off guard. The first or second time, the crowd might have thought that the little fatty had dodged the attack by luck, but every time he dodged the attack, the atmosphere was different. And Wan Yishui, who was in the middle of the battle, felt it even more deeply. By now, she could already be sure that this slippery fatty, who was as slippery as a loach, must have a strong talent in comprehension and the ability to withstand pressure of the physical body and soul. The strong ability of the physical body and soul to withstand pressure also reflected the strength of the soul, state of mind, and will. This meant that the little fatty's comprehension, soul force, will, state of mind, physical body, and other aspects were all strong. Especially his comprehension, to be able to comprehend the great teleportation technique to such a level, it was definitely not something an ordinary genius could do. The only thing he lacked was absolute power. Humph, if we were fighting in the outside world, it would be fine, but in the arena, you want to avoid me? After attacking for a long time without success, Wan Yishui, a top 100 expert, also felt ashamed. Knowing that if this continued, it would be impossible to take down the little fatty, she stopped, snorted, and said. As she spoke, her black hair danced wildly, and her hands slowly formed complex runes, constantly condensing in front of her. Chi 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 chi. With the birth of the light of the runes, the energy of heaven and earth in the space around Wan Yishui boiled and surged towards her. The runes became bigger and bigger, and the pressure and energy of the condensed Tao mark became stronger and stronger. Even though they were separated by the sealing enchantment of the ring, the cultivators below the ring could still feel the extremely terrifying pressure. As for Chen Hao, who was in the arena, there was no need to talk about it. The fat on his face trembled and his hair stood on end. Following the descent of Wan Yishui's ultimate move, his aura crazily soared. Rumblebus? Rumble? Rumble. When the runes condensed by Wan Yishui blotted out the sky and suddenly bloomed, it directly swept across the entire arena and exploded with a loud bang. The fatty, on the other hand, activated his strongest protective aura, his fat buttocks swayed wildly, his body twisted, and shuttled back and forth in the terrifying, turbulent energy of the Tao Law. The fat body, which was already covered with spots, almost instantly had a blood-stained style, and at the same time, he let out a pig-like scream. However, Mr. Gu Chan's mind had already become highly focused due to the battle between the two. He could intervene at any time to interrupt the battle between the two. He wanted to intervene a few times, but he forcefully held himself back. When the entire stage was submerged in the terrifying rune attack that Wan Yishui had unleashed, everyone could no longer see the fatty's figure. However, his miserable cries that sounded like a pig being slaughtered continuously came out from the terrifying explosion, proving to everyone that although he was in a miserable state, he was still dealing with it and resisting. To rumble, Wan Yishui crazily urged herself. At this time, her heart was both shocked and stifled. How could this damn fatty be so abnormal? This move of hers was an all-around attack that contained everything she had learned and all her strength. She believed that in this arena, she would definitely be able to beat that damn fatty to the ground. But now, she discovered that this fatty, who possessed the abnormal speed of the great teleportation technique, had an abnormal resistance to attacks in his body and soul. If it was an ordinary person, even if they did not die, they would have been invaded by her Tao Law and be completely injured and controlled. However, the fatty was shuttling back and forth between the weakest gaps of her rune attacks. He was repeatedly bombarded by terrifying energy, and his skin and flesh were torn open. However, he still maintained his agility, as if the one injured was not him. Wan Yishui pushed her mind and energy to the extreme, and the attacks that erupted from the huge rune became stronger and stronger. At this moment, she was like a burning flame, becoming more and more resplendent, hotter and hotter, climbing towards her limit. She was very clear that when the limit was reached, the flame would begin to extinguish. Ultimate moves, ultimate techniques, were like life, in harmony with nature. When the flame was at its brightest, it was also when it was about to extinguish. However, she was already riding a tiger and could not get off. One wrong step and all the steps would be wrong. In order to take down Chen Hao, using this kind of large-scale attack that consumed a lot of spirit and energy was basically a tactic that could not be taken back. Under normal circumstances, she would only use it when she had absolute confidence. Otherwise, if she failed to achieve her goal, it would be the time of her defeat. Wan Yishui was also certain that the damn fatty would definitely not be able to withstand this move, but now, rumble. The rune finally released its final and strongest attack. Even the huge rune itself collapsed and disintegrated, turning into a dazzling and terrifying stream of light that surrounded the blood-soaked fatty. Wah! Senior Sister Yishui, you can't blame me for this. It's you who couldn't hold it in, huh? This fatty's favorite thing is to crush opponents who have exhausted their energy to death. Boom! The fatty, whose skin and flesh were lacerated, no longer looked like a human. However, his voice was full of energy and was filled with extreme excitement. The moment he finished speaking, he soared into the air with a rumble. His legs stretched out to both sides, as if he was riding a horse. His fists were clenched tightly on both sides of his body. His blood-stained and excited face looked down, and his entire center of gravity was on his big bottom. What made everyone even more dumbfounded was that this guy's bottom was actually surging with the light of mysterious runes. Ah, my mother, fuck, this is possible? What if this fatty sits on it with his fart? Damn. Lord Fatty is mighty. What a good butt technique. Could it be the legendary, a chrysanthemum breaks the world? Looking at the fatty's trembling fat but that was blooming with the light of runes in the air, everyone was dumbfounded, tongue-tied, and dumbfounded. They had seen strange divine ability laws, but this kind of technique that was obviously specially trained was really something no one had seen before. They then looked at Wan Yishui, who had obviously used up all her energy and was standing there in a daze. Her face was pale, and her spirit was weak. She raised her head and stared at Wan Yishui with her eyes wide open. Her delicate body was trembling, and her eyes were filled with fear. No one could imagine the scene of the fatty sitting on Wan Yishui. Even if he couldn't crush her to death, he would die of shame, a dignified expert in the top 100, and a young girl at that. How could she be sat on by her but? Little fatty, stop. He Ming let out a loud roar. With a loud bang, he leaped up and charged towards the arena. Damn fatty, you dare. In the stage, Wan Yishui also roared with her eyes wide open. However, although the pressure released from the fatties but was not strong, to her who had exhausted her spirit, it was like a mountain pressing down on her. Chapter 1180. Wah! His skin was torn and his flesh was lacerated. The fatty bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he descended from the void. His laughter was a bit deranged, as if he had forgotten everything. His eyes, his expression, his body dripping with blood, and his large buttocks that flickered with the light of runes. No matter how one looked at it, the fatty seemed to have gone mad after being severely ravaged. Venting, who cared about anything else, he would kill you first. How could he possibly have heard the threats of the bystander He Ming and the person involved, Wan Yishui? Damn, you really think Lord Fatty is easy to bully? See if Lord Fatty doesn't sit on you to death. Or should I press? Should I press down all at once? Or should I press down on little waist? Or little face? No one knew that at this moment, the fatty was very clear-headed. He looked down at the pale and panic-stricken Wan Yishui without the slightest bit of pity. Damn, the absolute power that Lord Fatty displayed was clearly that little, but this bastard was still so ruthless. If Lord Fatty was not as simple as he seemed, wouldn't he have been killed? Damn, such a cute little fatty, look at how he was bullied. He did not have the slightest bit of mercy, so don't blame Lord Fatty for being merciless. Imagining the pretty Wan Yishui being pressed down by his buttocks, the fatty's eyes, as he descended, became more and more resplendent, more and more lascivious. Seeing that Wan Yishui was about to kneel under the fatty's buttocks, Wan Yishui also cried out in shock. A celestial light suddenly cut through the sky, and suddenly appeared between Chen Hao and Wan Yishui. At the same time, Wan Yishui was enveloped by endless celestial light. Space trembled, and he instantly moved to Teacher Gu Chan's side. Voila! The cultivators below the stage suddenly burst into an uproar. Damn, why didn't he press down? How can he stop him now? He obviously hasn't admitted defeat yet. Why did Teacher Gu stop him? I'm looking forward to the scene when Fatty rides him. Failure! What a pity, what could have been a classic battle ended like this. Depressing. Phew. That's good, that's good. If I was pressed down by this damn Fatty, Senior Sister Ishue would be angered to death. This damn Fatty is too shameless. Countless people expressed absolute regret and displeasure at Teacher Gu Chan's attack. No matter how strong or beautiful Wan Ishue was, it had nothing to do with them. They were looking forward to Fatty's divine buttocks art and sitting on a beauty like Wan Ishue. That would definitely be a very exciting scene. Unfortunately, Teacher Gu Chan had ended their perverted mentality. At the same time, there were also cultivators who breathed a sigh of relief for Wan Ishue. However, such people were only a minority. Little Fatty Li Yuan wins this match. Amidst the buzzing sounds of discussion, Gu Chan's indifferent voice suddenly drifted out, and it clearly entered into the ears of everyone. At this moment, the entire square fell into a momentary silence. Everyone shut their mouths. It was as if only now did they realize that the little Fatty had won. Top 100 treatment. The treatment of being in the top 100. Awesome! 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 From the beginning until now, how many matches had it been? No one had been able to defeat any of the arena champions. Little Fatty is really awesome. He's the number one. Motherfucker, how did he win? He was clearly ravaged until his skin and flesh were torn apart. He did win. The treatment of being in the top 100 is several times better than the usual treatment. Just the palace level alone is much higher in grade. I'm so envious. His skin is tough and his flesh is tough to take a beating. His luck is really good. Countless people looked at Fatty whose skin and flesh were torn apart with envy. No matter what method was used to defeat any arena champion, as long as he won, he would be able to obtain the treatment of being in the top 100 disciples of the Arena Champions Pavilion. And little Fatty was the first among the disciples who were waiting for the assessment this year to do so. Damn Fatty, I'm not done with you. Wan Ishue was extremely ashamed. As a top 100 expert, she clearly had the advantage of absolute strength, but she actually lost. If Fatty's combat strength was really strong, she would have accepted it. However, Fatty had completely won against her through speculation. However, the result was already out. No matter how unhappy she was, she could not make a scene in public. However, she could not hold it in any longer, so she sent a voice transmission to Chen Hao. Alright, Sister Ishue, find some free time and let me, Lord Fatty, play with you. Damn Fatty, what did you say? No need to doubt, you didn't hear me wrong. Lord Fatty's first pleasure in life is to play with a little sister like you. Rolling sheets and whatnot, it's quite interesting. When the time comes, I'll let you have a taste of Lord Fatty's 2 great chain divine arts, so that your love for Lord Fatty is not in vain. Chen Hao looked at Wan Ishue, pointed to his torn fat face, and then sent a voice transmission. Wan Ishue's eyes widened, and she was so angry that her whole body trembled. She really did not expect Fatty to be so shameless, arrogant, rogue, and shameless in his voice transmission. This was simply courting death. The first style of Lord Fatty's chain divine arts, buttocks divine art. When my buttocks press down, I'll sit on all the beauties in the world. The second style, golden spear does not fall. When the spear is out, thousands of mountains and thousands of caves are mine to ride. Get lost. How could Wan Ishue stand such a huge change in Fatty's appearance? In her anger, she even forgot to send a voice transmission and directly roared at Fatty. Her face, which was originally pale because of her weakness, was now flushed red, either from anger or embarrassment because of Chen Hao's rogue words. Ishue, you can go down. Fatty's face was full of grievance, and his eyes were wide open pitifully, like a resentful little wife, looking innocently at Wan Ishue. Wan Ishue was tongue-tied, completely infuriated by Fatty's shamelessness and hypocrisy. Teacher Gu-chan suddenly spoke. And as he spoke, he directly made a move, and a ray of immortal light directly sent Wan Ishue out of the arena. Ishue. He Ming went to Wan Ishue's side with a pained expression, wanting to comfort her. Get lost. Stay away from me. After Wan Ishue flipped out at He Ming, she directly used the remaining energy, turned into a ray of flowing light, and quickly left. Ishue. He Ming frowned and shouted, but he could not stop her. Damn Fatty. He Ming, I'm not someone who's looking for trouble. Fuck off, I know what to do even if you don't say it. He Ming, who was already angry, immediately flipped out when he heard that guy's provocative words. He pointed at Fatty's nose and scolded him bloody. As one of the top 100 experts of the various pavilions, coming here to be the arena master was originally to make a name for himself and be admired by the newcomers. But Wan Ishue actually lost to Fatty. Not to mention the strong Wan Ishue, even if it were any of them, they would probably not have the face to continue staying here. More importantly, Wan Ishue did not lose in battle strength. That was the most depressing thing. In the past, although it was rare to see someone defeat the arena master, there were still cases. But that was the case when a shocking genius appeared, and they also relied on their true battle strength to defeat the arena master. Fatty, on the other hand, was dodging from beginning to end, and did not fight head-on at all. Although this was also a kind of ability, it was still stifling. Chapter 1182. The arena battles continued, but it no longer had anything to do with Chen Hao. He was only controlling his freakish healing speed to observe the battles. In less than 6 hours, the remaining 61 rookies were defeated by He Ming and the other 9 rookies. When it was time for the seniors to challenge, Chen Hao thought that everyone would be very enthusiastic. After all, to be able to spar with an expert of the same realm, and with an expert like Teacher Gu-chan presiding over it, was definitely a good opportunity to hone themselves. More than 2,000 seniors had indeed shown great enthusiasm, but unfortunately, it was the enthusiasm to encourage others to ascend the stage, while they refused to do so no matter what. This also made Chen Hao understand that among the people present, only a country bumpkin like him, who had just stepped into the great world of Xian Di, would be so thirsty for battle. Most people would not expose their true strength in front of everyone unless they were rookies who had to show their faces for a month. After all, when the number of people reached 10,000, or when the 10-year limit was reached, there would be an official assessment. At that time, the ranking was the key. Little Fatty, I'll be waiting for you. Just as Teacher Gu-chan announced the end of this month's arena battles, He Ming finally spoke. As everyone expected, Teacher Gu-chan did not stop him. Like everyone present, they all looked at little Fatty, who was still sitting cross-legged and recuperating. Faced with everyone's gazes, the fat on Chen Hao's face trembled without any regard for his image. He seemed to be very surprised as he said, "Waiting for me? When you are done with the assessment, I, He Ming, will challenge you." After He Ming finished speaking, he transformed into a stream of light and flashed away. Chen Hao was slightly taken aback before he shrugged his shoulders without minding it. He was about to close his eyes and symbolically begin recuperating. After being injured so severely by Wan Ishue, it would be too exaggerated if he could recover in 6 hours. After all, he had not even comprehended the Dao marks that Wan Ishue left on his wounds. For cultivators, especially after reaching his realm, recuperation was also a form of cultivation. Under normal circumstances, very few people would seek help from others or consume elixirs to heal themselves. Only when they were unable to heal themselves would they do so. Basically, it was self-cultivation and self-healing. Forcefully destroying or comprehending the Dao marks in the wounds was a good way to cultivate, especially comprehension. Hello, Li Yuan. My name is Su Tao, and I'm from the True Martial City. They are also from the True Martial City. However, before Chen Hao could close his eyes, a few figures appeared in front of him with a swoosh 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 sound. They sat down directly in front of Chen Hao and formed a fist with Chen Hao. One of them took the lead and cupped his fists. "Hello, Brother Su." Chen Hao hurriedly cupped his fists. Little fatty, my name is Gong Chao. I'm Guida. Wang Chengfeng. In Susu. The other 3 men and 1 woman all introduced themselves. The fatty cupped his fists in response, but there was still a trace of doubt on his face. Li Yuan, your strength is not bad. Are you interested in joining our Carnage Battle team? In the future, we will all be disciples of the true martial pavilion. Our battle team needs your specialty. Su Tao went straight to the point. Carnage Battle Team? Chen Hao frowned slightly. What? What is it? You've never heard of us? Gong Chao asked in a seemingly surprised manner. The Carnage Battle Team was a very famous existence in the true martial city. How could anyone not know of them? Little fatty, if I'm not wrong, you should be a stowaway who entered the true martial city. Not long after you entered, you directly came here, right? The woman called In Susu looked at Chen Hao and said, That is indeed the case. That's right, it's normal that you don't know about our Carnage Battle team. You haven't even entered the immortal realm, how would you know about us? So it's like that. I was wondering why we hadn't heard of Little Fatty's talent in the true martial city. Otherwise, we would have used him as a meat shield, cough cough, chi. Su Tao's forehead bloomed with a ray of memory light and floated in front of Chen Hao. Li Yuan, you can take a look first. Okay, Chen Hao, who was puzzled, nodded and replied. He directly absorbed Su Tao's memory light into his forehead. After he finished reading, Chen Hao's fat face flashed with extreme shock. Soon after, it turned into a kind of intense excitement. The immortal realm, the path of the immortal emperor. So this is the path of the immortal emperor that Senior Yilan spoke of? Senior Yilan's second world should also originate from here. Chen Hao thought to himself. This was something that all cultivators in the great world of Xiandi were passionate about. It was also the best way to cultivate. The ranking battle of all the academies in the great world of Xiandi was also held in the immortal realm. It was similar to Yilan's second world, but it was 100% real. What you can do in the real world, what you can do when you step into the immortal realm. Your combat strength, talent, potential, and so on were all fully presented. There was nothing fake about you. The only things that were not restricted were your name and appearance. If you were unwilling, no one would know your true identity. I'm really looking forward to it. This is completely tailor-made for me. After reading Su Tao's memory, Chen Hao became more and more excited. How is it? It's really amazing. The great world of Xiandi actually has such an existence. I'm really looking forward to it. Brother Su, I can join you. Chen Hao said directly. However, I can't guarantee that I'll be with you all often. If you need me, just look for me. Su Tao wanted to say something but did not say it. Although Fatty said so, he was confident that he could integrate Fatty into his team. Time passed day by day, and new people continued to enter. Some people attracted attention as soon as they entered, and there were even challengers who took the initiative to challenge them. Basically, there was no lack of battles every day. This was different from the situation where the top 100 experts were the arena masters. There was no need to worry about exposing too much. They could even test the waters and show their faces in front of everyone to increase their fame and reputation. As for Chen Hao, when he first arrived, his aura was weak, so no one paid attention to him. After the arena battle, everyone knew that this fatty's strength was definitely not that great. However, if anyone wanted to use him to practice, it would be purely asking for trouble. That awesome speed, super strong endurance, and endurance were not things that ordinary people could take down. Otherwise, a powerhouse like Wan Yishui would not have been defeated by him. Only those who had nothing better to do would challenge Fatty. Brother Fatty, can you teach me that divine but art of yours? What's the use of teaching it to you? How can a body of bones display the power of my divine but art? Fatty looked at the guy in front of him who was exuding a lewd aura from his bones and scolded. After Su Tao talked to Chen Hao last time, this guy eagerly sat beside Chen Hao and called him Brother Fatty. He was very familiar and incomparably intimate. Brother Fatty, you don't have to worry about this. You just have to teach me. But can also be big or small. What are you going to use in exchange? Chen Hao narrowed his eyes. An imperceptible golden light flashed in the depths of his eyes as he stared at the skeletal man in front of him and asked. Chapter 1183. This guy, who was as thin as a monkey, was called Ao Qian. Chen Hao felt a sense of familiarity with him at first sight. The reason was very simple: his hairstyle and clothes. His hairstyle was a typical Earth hairstyle, commonly known as a trader's hairstyle. Although Li Yuan had only seen this hairstyle on the screen of Looking Back in History, Chen Hao still felt a sense of familiarity when he saw it on the other side of the endless Milky Way. What was even more familiar was that this guy was wearing typical sportswear, simple, clean, and free. If it weren't for his experience in the Sky River sector, Chen Hao would have thought that he was an Earthling. Of course, if it were just these 2 points, Chen Hao wouldn't have secretly activated his special ability to observe this guy. Because this guy was hiding his real aura. In fact, many of the cultivators present had changed their aura and appearance, so Chen Hao didn't care. But Chen Hao had to see clearly the people who were close to him. A faint golden light flickered in the depths of his eyes. My cultivation method doesn't suit you. We can't talk about money, right? That'll hurt our relationship. Fat brother, why are you looking at me like that? Don't tell me, you have a special hobby? Fuck, fat brother, this really won't do. Ao Qian felt a chill run down his spine as he spoke. Under Chen Hao's strange gaze, he felt as if he had been seen through. Especially when he saw Chen Hao staring at him, his eyes widening. Ao Qian had goosebumps all over his body. He covered his crotch and stuttered. Fuck off. How do you know that your cultivation method doesn't suit me? There's no cultivation method in the world that I, Lord Fatty, can't comprehend. Talking about money hurts our relationship? Talking about relationships hurts money too. Cut the crap. How about you give me a lost art in exchange? How about 1,000,000 immortal crystal coins? After Ao Qian finished speaking, Chen Hao, who was in a daze, finally reacted a few seconds later. Then he directly rattled off a paragraph. Fuck. The corners of Ao Qian's mouth instantly twitched and he said, Fatty bro, I'm serious. It's really not suitable for you. Otherwise, I'd directly exchange it with you. As for the 1,000,000 immortal crystal coins. Brother Fatty, I've just started out. How can I steal from you? Why don't we put it on credit first? What are you talking about if you don't have money? If you want to learn it, use a cultivation technique to exchange for it. Whether you can master it or not, you don't have to worry about it. As long as your cultivation is sufficient, you can use it as a reference. This? Forget it. I'll exchange it with you when I have a better cultivation technique. Sure enough, as Chen Hao expected, Ao Qian shrank back. What Chen Hao wanted was a cultivation technique that was at least at the level of the great teleportation technique. This was the fucking 3000 Great Daos. The only thing that was not at all inferior was Ao Qian's own bloodline inheritance. Chen Hao did not need this, but it was of great use to him. Obviously, even though Ao Qian said it nicely, it was impossible for him to reveal his heart to Chen Hao right now. Otherwise, how could this wretched and lascivious fellow give up the but divine technique that he wanted so much? The challenge tournament was held once a month, and it was still going on. Basically, the participants were the top 100 experts, or those who were slightly above the top 100. However, other than the new cultivators, there were still very few seniors participating. Sometimes, none of them even went up. Although Chen Hao was a little annoyed, he did not really care. He had already obtained the treatment of being in the top 100. Although he was eager to fight now, he had just arrived at the great world of Xiandi, and it was also necessary for him to meditate in silence. There was no need to show off his abilities now. Otherwise, when he was fighting with Wan Yishui, he would not have even launched a counterattack before the latter's energy was exhausted. Every time it was time for the challenge tournament, Chen Hao would watch the battle with great interest. He would gather with Ao Qian and the other members of the Carnage Battle team and discuss animatedly. However, most of the time, the members of the Carnage Battle team, especially the only female In Susu, would be defeated by the lewdness and shamelessness of the fat guy and the skinny guy. As long as a woman appeared, and as long as the woman was not too bad, the two fellows would have a big talk. Every time Insusu wanted to say a few words of disdain, she would be glanced at by the two men's lewd gazes, and she would not dare to say anything. Otherwise, she would become the subject of their discussion. However, this kind of exchange of watching the battle together also allowed Chen Hao and the others to understand each other better. They could be considered as the first group of people that Chen Hao had really met after entering the great world of Xiandi. Through Su Tao and the others from the Carnage Battle team, he also met many cultivators from the real martial arts city. At the same time, intentionally or unintentionally, Chen Hao also learned a lot of information about the great world of Xiandi through these conversations. During the rest of the time, Chen Hao sat cross-legged and meditated. Occasionally, someone would come over to greet him, and sometimes, someone would look for the fat guy to spar with the great teleportation technique. Because the fat guy had defeated Wan Yishui and obtained the qualification to be in the top 100, the cultivators present, regardless of whether they went up to befriend him or not, at least knew about the fat guy. In the blink of an eye, 6 years had passed in a hurry. Chen Hao had only opened and closed his eyes about 100 times or so. There were still not 10,000 candidates, but the 10-year deadline was up. This also meant that most of the people present would not be eliminated. Everyone, the 10-year deadline is up. There are a total of 6,534 people. The assessment begins today. On the same day and at the same time in the assessment square of the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, a loud voice sounded at the same time in the Daluo Golden Wonderland Square where Chen Hao was. First, we are going to conduct the foundation test. The results of the foundation test will account for 30% of the final ranking of the assessment. After deducting 30% of the potential value, the combat strength ranking competition will only account for 40% of the total score. Among you, the one who ranks first will directly receive the treatment of the top 10 for a year. If you show the potential to be in the top 10 within a year, you will enjoy it forever. The top 10 will enjoy the treatment of the top 100 for a year. Similarly, you need to show the potential you should have within a year. Otherwise, it will be cancelled. The top 100 will receive the treatment of the top 1,000. The words spoken in the assessment square of the two realms were basically the same. In the University of Taoism, only the Daluo Golden Wonderland and the Grand Mist Supremacy Realms assessments were held once every 10 years and were so strict. After reaching the cutting path true immortal realm, it was not so complicated. As long as one met the standards of the University of Taoism, one could become a disciple. After all, the cutting path true immortal realm was considered a high level, and its plasticity was already poor. The results of the assessment at any time were very accurate. The increase in potential was very limited. On the other hand, those below the Daluo Golden Wonderland were basically geniuses that were nurtured by themselves. They were considered the most basic strength of the academy. Moreover, unless the academy agreed, these cultivators who were nurtured from a young age could not change the academy. Only this kind of disciple was similar in nature to a sect. Chapter 1184. After the basic test and the combat strength ranking competition, those who are not satisfied with their potential value can choose to retest their potential value. Those who do not want to retest will be calculated according to the results of the most recent test. Alright, everyone, please take out your tokens and enter the testing palace to begin the test. Teacher Gu Chan said. There were only 3 basic tests: attack power, speed, and endurance. In the attack power test, cultivators could use any law of divine ability, and the goal was to obtain the strongest attack power. In fact, this was a dual test of absolute power and law of divine ability. It was just that the final attack power was only looked at. The speed test did not test pure speed, but combined footwork, law of divine ability, and so on to display the fastest speed, as well as change of direction, dodging ability, and so on. In fact, it tested the comprehensive ability of pursuit, evasion, dodging, and so on. The endurance test was naturally a dual test of the physical body and soul endurance. The 3 basic tests could basically reflect a cultivator's combat strength. Potential value could represent a cultivator's future speed of advancement and the height they could reach. After the first 2 tests, The combat strength ranking competition basically tested battle experience, skills, and the ability to explode on the spot. The results of the 3 tests were combined to obtain the final ranking. It's been more than 7 years and I've made some progress. At least my true potential value should have increased quite a bit. Should I retest? I have exposed my speed and endurance in the basic test, so it doesn't matter. But my attack power, should I expose some? After the test began, a huge silver pagoda monument appeared in the core arena of the plaza. After everyone took out their tokens and released the aura of their tokens, everyone's names appeared on the pagoda monument one after another, as well as the results of their most recent potential value test. Chen Hao had only taken the test once, and without a doubt, he was the one with the lowest potential value among everyone present. Under normal circumstances, even if it was a specially recruited cultivator, their potential value would meet the basic requirements of a first-rate academy. However, Chen Hao and Si Xian were slightly lacking. Although it wasn't much, it was a little dazzling for them to appear here at this time. However, no one dared to underestimate Fatty. After all, Fatty had defeated Wan Yishui, a disciple of the top 100. Even if the people who came later did not see it with their own eyes, they had heard of it. Fatty was the only person in this year's Daluo Golden Wonderland to defeat the Arena Master. Even if he did not obtain victory through absolute battle prowess, he still won. This was an ironclad fact. To put it bluntly, it was Chen Hao who felt ashamed. Back then, he had deliberately suppressed himself in order to take care of Si Xian. That was how he had obtained the top potential value of a second-rate academy. Who would have known that he would unexpectedly come to a first-rate academy? Chen Hao looked at his name and was a little hesitant about whether he should reveal a little more. He had already obtained the treatment of the top 100 disciples, but there was still the treatment of the top 10. However, the conditions were a little harsh. Only those who obtained first place in the final assessment could obtain it. Even for Chen Hao, this was difficult. Among the people present, there were several experts who did not reveal their strength, but made Chen Hao feel threatened. In fact, one only needed to look at the potential value of the people at the top to know that first place was not so easy to obtain. Unless Chen Hao stopped hiding and completely revealed himself. In the 7 years since he came here, Chen Hao had improved significantly through observing the battles and self-comprehending cultivation. At least, the restriction of the heavenly Tao on his realm had disappeared, and he had a deeper understanding of it. His potential value had definitely increased. Chen Hao believed that if he were to completely reveal himself now, the increase in his potential value would definitely stun everyone present. Damn it, if I want to act pretentious and keep a low profile, I can't act pretentious and keep a low profile until I'm an idiot. If I don't want benefits, would I be an idiot? It's just a first-rate academy. Lord Fatty has the strength of a first-rate academy. I'll be the top team in a first-rate academy, right? Fatty looked at the cultivators who were entering the testing palace from the square. Their spirits were high as they entered the testing palace, and his heart began to itch. I'll give it a try. 80% of my strength. If I can get it, then I'll get it. If I can't, then forget it. Chen Hao took a deep breath and made his decision. Brother Fatty, it can't be. How can your potential value not cross the line? Age, soul, body, state of mind, comprehension, willpower. Brother Fatty, you're very powerful in all aspects. Your only flaw is that your absolute strength is a little weak. How can it be that you're 11 points short of the basic standard of a first-rate academy? Ao Qian said in astonishment. He was really astonished. He had seen the battle between Fatty and Wan Yishui clearly. Other than the flaw of absolute strength, Fatty was very strong in all aspects. He believed that even if Fatty were to test with his eyes closed, his potential value would definitely reach the mid-range of a first-rate academy, or even the top of a first-rate academy. Keep a low profile, do you understand? It's just potential value. If I, Brother Fatty, want it, the standard of a first-rate academy is like catching a chicken in my pants. It's a piece of cake. Stop bragging. However, Fatty, your potential value does not match. I reckon that when you were testing, you had just stepped into the great world of CND and were not used to it. Right now, I can feel that in these 7 years, your aura has undergone a transformation. Your improvement is definitely not small. After the ranking battle, let's test again. After all, the treatment you received in the top 100 is a little unreliable. I'm afraid you can only enjoy it for a year before being kicked out. In Susu said mercilessly. In the end, combat strength is the most important. Absolute strength is the foundation. Fatty, is your absolute strength really that weak? Su Tao continued. The 5 members of the Carnage Battle team had been together with Chen Hao and Ao Qian for a few years. Although they did not have much experience, and only cultivated and discussed in the square, they were still very familiar with each other. After all, Chen Hao had agreed to join the Carnage Battle team from the beginning. He could be considered a member. Ao Qian, who had been worshipping Fatty, naturally became familiar with him. Brother Su, it's hard to say. Fatty scratched his head. Ao Qian looked at Chen Hao's expression and suddenly jumped up. Keep a low profile. Brother Fatty, I believe you. You're hiding your potential. When you were fighting with Shui Niu, your aura was so strong. How can your potential value be so low? You even deliberately hid your potential value. This is low profile. Whether you believe it or not, I, Ao Qian, believe it. Ao Qian patted his chest and said, Fuck. It can't be? How can it be so high? At this moment, the crowd suddenly exclaimed. Everyone's gaze was focused on the name and number that appeared at the top of the pagoda monument. Sweat. I have something to do tonight. My friend called me for dinner. It's so hard to bring it up again. I'm sorry everyone. Tomorrow or the day after, I'll try to update more. Dark Mountain is really useless. Chapter 1185. Ling Feng, Potential Value, 2,311. Chen Hao and Si Xian's potential value was only a little short of 1,000 points. 1,000 points was the difference between a second-rate academy and a first-rate academy. It was also the basic line for a first-rate academy. 2,000 points was the difference between a first-rate academy and a top-notch academy. And this cultivator named Ling Feng had a potential value of 2,311 points. With such a high potential value, even in a top-notch academy, he would be ranked above average. Why would such a genius come to Dehua Academy? Ling Feng, who is Ling Feng? I don't have any impression of him. It's him. Like me, he was one of the first to come here. His performance in the arena battle was very ordinary. After the battle, he didn't open his eyes. He's him? I couldn't tell at all. The crowd was buzzing with discussion. After the cultivators present released the aura of their identity tokens, they would be able to connect with the pagoda stele and display their names and information about their potential value. However, the cultivators were unable to match the names on the pagoda stele with their real names. As a result, in the beginning, the majority of people did not know who Ling Feng was. However, very soon, someone revealed who he was. In the end, everyone's gazes gathered together and landed on Ling Feng, who was sitting cross-legged with the aura of a medallion radiating from between his eyebrows. However, his eyes were still closed. Everyone, including Chen Hao, was no exception. This was a cultivator with a very ordinary appearance. His body was slightly thin and his life aura was very young. However, the aura of his soul and body was very ordinary. There was no sense of strength in him at all. Just like his appearance and body, it was extremely ordinary. Phew, perhaps it was the first time he had woken up in 10 years. Ling Feng let out a long sigh. When he reached the end of his breath, his slightly closed eyes slowly opened. In an instant, it was as if 2 suns had just risen, reflecting in everyone's eyes. Bright but gentle. Facing the attention of the crowd, Ling Feng did not feel strange at all. Only a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, causing his ordinary face to give off a completely different feeling. In the face of the buzzing discussion, Ling Feng's bright but gentle eyes slowly scanned the surrounding crowd. A gentle wave of divine sense rippled out from between his eyebrows like a wave of water. I, your brother, have the aptitude of a top-notch academy, yet the old man arranged for me to go to this lousy first-rate academy. How am I going to live in the future? Lonely as snow, lonely as snow. Ling Feng's gaze shifted. With a faint smile on his face, he gave everyone the feeling that he was definitely high-end, magnanimous, high-class, low-key, luxurious, and profound. However, what everyone did not know was that this fellow was sizing up the cultivators around him. Regardless of whether they were male or female, they were all feeling a headache and depressed. So what if your talent is bad? You don't even have a single beauty that can catch my eye. What kind of world is this? How tragic. Fortunately, this was only this batch of examinees. There should be some stronger ones in the academy, right? If they're all like this, I'm afraid I'll be depressed to death. Motherfucker, I really don't know why the old man wants me to come here. Just as Ling Feng scanned the crowd like a king and was about to complete a round, his gaze, which had not changed in the slightest, suddenly lit up and fell on a figure. There's actually someone like me? Ling Feng locked on to this figure in shock, and his powerful soul perception was suddenly fully activated. What a strong fatty. He's not inferior to me. Ling Feng did not care about the gazes around him. His figure suddenly flashed and appeared in front of his target, who was also looking at him. The fatty was naturally Chen Hao. Under Ling Feng's naked and scrutinizing gaze, Chen Hao felt as if he had been seen through. This fellow's gaze was very, very sharp, far beyond his realm. This was the most intuitive feeling that Chen Hao had. Buzz. When Chen Hao saw that the other party had actually directly appeared in front of him and unscrupulously scrutinized him, he did not want to be outdone. His eyes suddenly flashed with a faint golden light. It can't be, right? However, what made Chen Hao almost cry out in surprise was that Chen Hao, who had only used the fiery golden eyes' special ability to not appear weak, actually discovered that Ling Feng's appearance was a disguise. There's actually someone like me? At this moment, Chen Hao knew why Ling Feng had directly appeared in front of him. Furthermore, in his heart, Chen Hao had almost said the same thing when Ling Feng had seen him. The two of them stared at each other. Chen Hao's eyes blossomed with a golden light, while Ling Feng's eyes were like the scorching sun in the sky. Furthermore, they were getting closer and closer, staring at each other as they walked in circles. This scene made the surrounding cultivators, who were already surprised that Ling Feng had directly appeared in front of the fatty, even more surprised. What the fuck was this situation? Could it be that this was the legendary mutual appreciation? However, Ling Feng's potential value was at the level of a top-notch academy, and definitely above average. He was definitely an awesome person among the top geniuses of the great world of Xiandi. The little fatty's potential value had not even reached the basic level of a top-notch academy. Although he had defeated the top 100 disciple Wan Yishui, which made everyone conclude that the little fatty's potential value was definitely higher than that, he was still on a completely different level from Ling Feng. Why would Ling Feng care so much about this fatty? Big brother, I'm called Ling Feng. Fat Lord, I'm called Li Yuan. Big brother, I'm an outsider. Fat Lord, I'm the same. Fatty is really annoying. Your appearance is also asking for a beating. Looks like there's something wrong with our eyes. Big brother, I've underestimated you, fatty. Li Yuan. Fuck, you can't be, right? 988 points? Ling Feng's gaze finally moved away from Chen Hao's face and looked at the pagoda monument. When he saw the two words, Li Yuan, he immediately jumped up and stared at Chen Hao as he said this. Fuck, to be able to act pretentious to such an extent, this was really too awesome. Was there a need to disguise his potential value like this? The reason why Ling Feng and Chen Hao appreciated each other was because Ling Feng was the first to discover Chen Hao's secret. Under his provocative gaze, Chen Hao also used his special ability to discover Ling Feng's secret, the ultimate form of the Great Change technique, and both of them had the special ability of their eyes. However, the color of the crystal light that blossomed from their eyes was different. Whether they were both fiery golden eyes or not was not something that Chen Hao could guess at the moment. At least there was one point, and that was that both of them could see through each other's disguise. No one could sense the ultimate form of the Great Change technique, unless it was an expert who had surpassed the true immortal king realm. Perhaps it was possible. It was also because of this that Chen Hao was not the slightest bit worried that someone would be able to see through him. Similarly, this was also the reason why Chen Hao had only been shocked by Ling Feng's potential value when he first saw him and did not discover anything unusual about him. Chapter 1186. When Chen Hao felt that he had been seen through by Ling Feng, he also used his special ability. Only then did he realize that Ling Feng had also used the ultimate form of the Great Change Art. If not for that, Chen Hao would not have been able to discover that the other party had also used the ultimate form of the Great Change Art. This was something that could not be helped. Chen Hao's fiery eyes of truth was really too perverse. Once used, it meant that he could see through everything, and the seemingly casual conversation between the two made them understand that they had been seen through by the other party. Ling Feng was shocked and so was Chen Hao. And when Ling Feng wanted to see Chen Hao's potential value, he realized that it was actually the last place, 988 points. If he had not discovered Chen Hao's disguise, Ling Feng would not have said anything. But knowing the fatty's concealment, it was different. This fatty was able to cultivate the Great Change Art to the extreme, and even had the special ability of his eyes. How could he be so weak? Even if he was not as good as him, he was definitely a top existence in a first-rate academy. Furthermore, Ling Feng could feel a dangerous aura from the fatty. This aura would only appear under one circumstance, a strong opponent. This meant that the fatty was not necessarily worse than him, but the fatty was actually so full of himself. 988 points. Even the basic standard of a first-rate academy was 12 points lower. Lord Fatty is happy. You have a problem? Chen Hao saw the other party looking at him like he was an idiot and was instantly displeased. TSK? So arrogant. You, Fatty, are the first who dares to speak to me like this. After the test, I will have a good chat with you. Don't be afraid. As Ling Feng spoke, he felt the movement of the token. After he finished speaking, he turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the entrance of the testing palace. Afraid? Lord Fatty will wait. Chen Hao was not afraid at all. The special ability of his eyes, the ultimate form of the Great Change Art, extremely high potential value. These were all existences that aroused Chen Hao's curiosity. Brother Fatty, what's going on? That kid is very impressive. His potential value is SOSO, and quite high. Ao Chen said, potential value of a top academy. Fatty, you can't afford to offend this person. It's better to be careful. Why is he targeting you? The captain of the Carnage Battle team, Su Tao, frowned. Have you met each other before? Or did you have any conflicts? Good asked. It's obvious that this is the first time they've met. How long has it been since Fatty came to the great world of Xiandi? How could there be any conflicts? In Susu said, Ling Feng? I seem to have heard this name somewhere, but I can't remember it at the moment. Su, you seem to have some impression. The one you find familiar should be Feng Ling, right? Feng Ling? Everyone's expression changed. I was wondering why this name sounded so familiar. Ling Feng. Captain, do you think they are related? It shouldn't be a problem. Hundreds of millions of years ago, after Feng Lin was conferred the title of king, there had been no news of him in the cultivation world. How could it be related to someone as young as Ling Feng? Moreover, in his conversation with Fatty, he said that he's an outsider. It's not a problem that he's an outsider. The king of Feng Ling is an outsider, but he was conferred the title of king in the great world of Xiandi. Alright, no matter what, it's impossible for the two of them to be related. Not to mention that the king of Feng Ling hasn't appeared for hundreds of millions of years and only exists in the records. Even if the king of Feng Ling was still around, he wouldn't allow his descendants to use Ling Feng as their names, right? That's true. Chen Hao looked at everyone. They were asking him questions, but he didn't have the chance to interrupt. It became an argument between a few people. Who's the king of Feng Ling? Chen Hao seized the opportunity to ask when everyone was done arguing. He was one of the 8 king-ranked experts hundreds of millions of years ago. He was the only outsider among the 8 king-ranked experts. Back then, the outsiders in the great world of Xiendi regarded him as their idol and pride. His popularity overshadowed the other 7 king-ranked experts. Unfortunately, after he was conferred the title of king-ranked expert, King of Fengling disappeared and hasn't appeared for hundreds of millions of years. However, the King of Fengling's tyrannical combat power is still talked about enthusiastically in the cultivation world. The new true immortal kings can't be compared to him at all. Su Tao said, Fengling Ling Feng. In everyone's opinion, it was impossible for Ling Feng to be related to the King of Fengling from hundreds of millions of years ago. However, Chen Hao didn't think so. Most of the time, the more people thought it was impossible, the more likely it was. That was why Chen Hao asked about the King of Fengling. Su Tao's words surprised Chen Hao. A king-ranked expert hundreds of millions of years ago, an outsider. Didn't Yi Lan leave the great world of Xiendi hundreds of millions of years ago? However, Yi Lan told Chen Hao that he hadn't broken through to the true immortal king level. Obviously, Yi Lan couldn't be the King of Fengling. However, the arrogance in Yi Lan's words also made Chen Hao conclude that Yi Lan was definitely a person who stirred up a storm in the great world of Xiendi. Moreover, there must be many secrets. Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a place. In that case, was Yi Lan related to the 8 king-ranked experts hundreds of millions of years ago? Was the King of Fengling very strong? What was his most powerful technique? Did he leave behind any inheritance or Dao marks? Chen Hao asked curiously. He was very strong. Hundreds of millions of years ago, the 8 king-ranked experts were all famous top geniuses. However, no one dared to provoke the King of Fengling. Firstly, Lord Fengling's combat strength was not weaker than anyone else's. Secondly, Lord Fengling was good at hiding and disguising. As an outsider, he was able to become a true immortal king step by step. He must have killed many masters of the same level. More importantly, he did not join any academy, which meant that he did not have any protection. It could be said that he had enemies all over the world, but he always came and went as he pleased. It was said that when he was a Daoyuo Golden Immortal, he had already cultivated the Great Change technique to the ultimate level. At the same time, he also has a special ability. Once he hides his aura, no one in the world can find him. Chen Hao's expression changed slightly. The fat on his face trembled slightly, but he concealed it very well. He said, "So the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland is the Great Change technique? That's amazing! That's amazing! My idol! Brother Su, tell me what you know. I know too little about the Immortal Emperor's boundless 1,000 worlds. So, they are related. The King of Fengling, damn it, this wretched, shameless, pretentious guy. Could he be the King of Fengling himself?" When Chen Hao asked Su Tao for information, he was certain that the guy just now was related to the King of Fengling. He could be a transcendent mortal or a rebirth realm cultivator, or his descendant. Let's talk when we get out. Buzz. At this moment, Su Tao and the others' tokens vibrated. Before they could say anything to Chen Hao, they turned into streamers and dashed toward the entrance of the testing palace. Chapter 1187. According to the order in which the cultivators arrived at the assessment square, Chen Hao and the others stepped into the assessment palace one by one. The first test is the attack power test. Everyone will attack 100 times, and the average will be the final result. If the strongest attack power is twice the average, the result will be 1 times the average. If the strongest attack power is 3 times the average, the result will be 2 times the average. If the strongest attack power is 5 times the average, the result will be 2 times the average. The 6,534 people automatically arranged themselves into a huge square formation according to the energy waves they received from the token and sat down cross-legged. Following Master Gu Chan's words, a 1,000-foot-wide pagoda tablet covered with golden crystals and mysterious runes slowly rose from the ground in front of everyone. This was the attack power testing apparatus. Each golden crystal was condensed from the star core of a small star. When the cultivator's attack landed on the testing apparatus, the star core would light up. The number of stars that could light up depended on the strength of the cultivator's attack. Most of the people here should know how to get the best result for their attack power. However, there might be some who are participating for the first time. As a matter of routine, the old man explained again. The reason why the average of 100 times is that it pays more attention to the cultivator's own absolute strength. Only when one's absolute strength is strong can one continuously and steadily launch attacks. The strongest attack is to test everyone's explosive power. Under normal circumstances, this kind of attack cannot be sustained for many times. Therefore, during the test, when to use it and how many times to use it will depend on everyone's judgment. This will have a certain impact on the result. Gu Chan explained. The 12 young men and women seemed to have arrived at the testing palace early. They stood on both sides of the testing apparatus and were in charge of recording the results. At this moment, they were sizing up the crowd and communicating telepathically. I heard that there are a few powerhouses in this batch of newcomers. Why can't I sense them? What's the rush? How can they be called powerhouses if they can be sensed so easily? One has already been revealed. He's an outsider. His potential can be ranked in the top 30 among the top geniuses of our direct disciples. His name is Ling Feng. This kind of person can easily enter a top academy. I really don't know why he came to our Dehua Academy. Isn't that simple? It's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Perhaps. However, it's basically impossible for non-direct disciples to obtain the Academy's precious resources. It was also because of his appearance that 4 geniuses from the direct descendant disciples were officially born, and it was obvious that they were targeting him. The treatment of being in the top 10 is not something that can be obtained by non-direct descendants, even if it's just for a year. That's true. The auras of the 12 young men and women were not very strong. Compared to Wan Yishui and the other top 100 disciples, they were a bit inferior. However, the 12 of them exuded an aura of superiority. The reason was simple. They were direct disciples. They were the direct disciples of Dehua Academy who had been nurtured since young. It could be said that in life, he was a member of Dehua University, and in death, he was a ghost of Dehua University. Cultivators with similar aptitudes, or even stronger aptitudes, might not be treated as well as they were in Dehua Academy. Only the top disciples could enjoy such precious resources. It was basically impossible for non-direct disciples to have access to them. It was just like the treatment of the top 10 in the same realm. Very few disciples who were not of the direct line of descent were able to obtain it. This situation was the same for any academy. The direct disciples were also the foundation of an academy. Unless non-direct disciples had signed an extremely long contract, it was basically impossible for them to obtain the resources in a seemingly fair competition. When Ling Feng, a disciple of a top academy, arrived, Dehua Academy arranged for 4 direct disciples to be born. This was to prevent the top 10 from falling into Ling Feng's hands. The best resources were used on the direct disciples. This was undoubtedly what every academy was most happy to see. Unless you were so heaven-defying that the direct disciples could not contend against you, then you would have nothing to say if you got the resources. This was an open secret in the entire cultivation world. Similarly outstanding, direct disciples had priority. Look, that little fatty is also an awesome person. Oh, the little fatty who defeated Wan Yishui? It's said that this little fatty's attack power is slightly weaker, but his other aspects are very strong. Otherwise, Wan Yishui would not have been defeated so easily. That's right. Let's not talk about other things. I've experienced Wan Yishui's Azure Silk Jade Ripple technique. If one's state of mind is slightly weaker, they would have been killed by it. I wonder who the 4 geniuses from our direct disciples are. We'll know when the test results come out. Anyway, it's within this group of people. Moreover, their initial potential value is just right at 1,000 points. As long as we pay attention to the 124 people, we should be able to guess it very quickly. Dehua Academy's direct disciples would only be born when they were at the peak of the late stage of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Every 10 years, there would be a few, dozens, or even hundreds of them. and the top geniuses would always choose an appropriate time to be born. And this time, there were 4 of them born because of Ling Feng. Direct disciples' potential values were all 1,000 points. Therefore, these 4 people would definitely be among the 124 cultivators with 1,000 points. As for who they were, they could only be determined by the test results later on. Even if it was them before the other party was born, they would still know who they were. Direct disciples were all direct disciples of Dehua Academy's teachers. Their grooming from young was also carried out by their respective teachers. It was not managed by the academy. Therefore, between direct disciples, before their identity was revealed, they would not know each other. Alright, let's officially start the test. Everyone carefully observe and comprehend. This is a rare opportunity. We have the support of the space-time laws here. In real time, we can complete all the basic tests in a day. Every segment will be done one by one for everyone to observe and learn from. Whoever's name is displayed on the testing device will go on stage. At the same time, pass the token to the 2 recording personnel on both sides. After Teacher Gu-chan finished his explanation, a bright light suddenly shone from between his eyebrows. A huge token covered in runes instantly flew up and merged with the testing device. Hiss! The testing device that was thousands of feet wide and tens of thousands of feet tall, like a towering monument, instantly emitted an endless amount of immortal light, forming an extremely powerful seal around it. At this moment, the golden star cores on the testing device emitted a faint glow. A dense and mysterious aura permeated the entire space. Immediately, a golden name appeared at the top of the testing device. At the same time, it displayed the potential value behind the name, as well as the results of the 3 basic tests that were temporarily empty, and the ranking of the combat strength competition. At this moment, the cultivator whose name was displayed directly soared into the air and flew towards the narrow door of light opened by the testing device's barrier. Chapter 1188. Buzz. What surprised Chen Hao and some of the new cultivators who were entering the academy for the first time was that the cultivator's aura did not weaken the moment he stepped into the testing device's barrier. Instead, it suddenly strengthened and became clearer. Amazing! This is indeed a good opportunity for cultivators to learn and comprehend. The 100-fold space-time law made it so that no one would waste any time. Moreover, when the aura was strengthened, the spectators would be able to sense it even more clearly when the cultivator unleashed any ultimate technique attacks. Moreover, everyone present was in the same realm to begin with. Moreover, most of them had similar abilities and talents. Thus, it would naturally be much easier and more practical for them to comprehend. There would never be a situation where one would not be able to comprehend it, nor would there be a situation where one would not be able to comprehend it. Rumble. Rumble. The first cultivator who started the test began to attack after a short adjustment. The 3 basic tests did not allow the use of any Dharma treasures. All the divine ability laws could only be condensed by oneself. In fact, at the cultivation level of the Daluo Golden Wonderland, regardless of whether it was sword techniques, saber techniques, palm techniques, fist techniques, finger techniques, etc., they could all transcend the restrictions of the equipment and be unleashed with one's own absolute strength. The attack power produced in this way belonged to the cultivator's own absolute strength. This cultivator's rhythm was clear. He condensed an attack every 5 seconds. With each attack, the golden star cores on the testing device would light up one by one from bottom to top, emitting a dazzling light. 1231, 1235, 1229. As the cultivator attacked, the screen at the top of the testing device showed the number of star cores that lit up with each attack. Potential value is more than 1,200, and the attack power is also more than 1,200. This guy is very ordinary. Yes, he should be more average in all aspects. He doesn't have any special skills. Yes, the divine ability laws he unleashed are also very ordinary, and the strength bonus is also very ordinary. If nothing goes wrong, his strongest attack power is only twice the average. To us, there's nothing to see. The only ones that we can look forward to are the direct disciples of Ling Feng and Dehua, plus Fatty Liyuan. If nothing goes wrong, the first place will be born between them. Fatty Li Yuan has no hope, right? It seems the most hopeless, but the more it's like this, the more likely it is that something unexpected will happen. The only flaw in his battle with Wan Yishui was his attack power. But this is only what we think. From the beginning to the end, he never really attacked. It would be fine if his potential value was higher, but now that he knew that his potential value was only 988, he was sure that he had hidden his strength during the potential value test. How could it be possible for someone who had deliberately hidden himself to have weak attack power? At the very least, the aura that he exuded on the surface was completely a bluff. Someone like Ling Feng, who didn't hide his potential, would often become the target of the direct disciples. Basically, the direct disciples would be arranged according to his strength. Therefore, Ling Feng's chances of getting first place were even lower. If it wasn't for the fatty's heaven-defying achievement, it would have been the direct disciple who obtained first place. This quota is very important. The treatment for the top 10 is no less than the treatment for the top 100 of the top academies. Even if it's just a year, the amount of resources used up is astonishing. No one would be willing to spend it on someone who isn't a direct descendant. Chen Hao's consciousness permeated the entire space, collecting information that was useful to him. Direct disciple. That's pretty much the same as Senior Yi Lan's information. It looks like it won't be that easy to get first place. Chen Hao's gaze landed on Ling Feng, who was sitting cross-legged not far away. As for the direct disciples of the Dehua Academy, although Chen Hao wasn't 100% sure, he could roughly guess who they were. With his powerful soul perception and fiery golden eyes, it was almost impossible to completely escape from Chen Hao's senses even if they hid their aura. There's also Ao Qian. Immediately, Chen Hao looked at the skinny monkey Ao Qian. This traitorous guy, who gave Chen Hao a sense of intimacy, was also hiding his strength. However, he probably won't reveal his true strength. Otherwise, he would reveal everything. That would be troublesome. Not everyone is as loving as me. Rumble. 3,700. It's actually 3 times? Unexpectedly, this is not bad. It's at least above average. The first cultivator had finally completed 100 attacks. The last attack displayed the strongest attack power, which exceeded most people's expectations. It was 3 times the average attack power. The final result of the attack power was 2 times the average attack power, which became 1503. In terms of pure attack power, it was definitely in the middle of the top academies. Immediately after, the second cultivator began the test. Dozens of cultivators in a row didn't perform too well, but each of them controlled their 100 attacks very well. Basically, when the last attack was completed, it would exhaust all of its energy, reaching the pinnacle. Chen Hao only collected some information at the beginning, then immersed himself in the test. Every move that each cultivator made, regardless of whether it was strong or weak, he carefully sensed and comprehended it. Everyone had their own strengths, and what was displayed during this test was undoubtedly the strongest mystic ability of the vast majority of people. For Chen Hao, who had a terrifying comprehension ability and was good at stealing others' knowledge, this was undoubtedly the best learning opportunity. The strength of the great world of Xiandi didn't allow Chen Hao to lower his guard. He, who could still stand out in the top academies, knew very well that if he really took himself seriously and became arrogant and complacent, then he would really be an idiot. The great world of Xiandi had 3,000 main planets and 3,000 top academies. There were 100 top academies that were independent of the main planets. Not to mention that each top academy had millions or tens of millions of cultivators. Even in the 3,000 top academies, there were countless extremely powerful top geniuses who were not inferior to the top academies. Moreover, the millions or tens of millions of cultivators only counted cultivators below the 6th heaven of cutting Tao true immortal, and still had room for improvement. As for cultivators who had reached their own limits, it would not be counted. Ao Qian, potential value, 1,642. After hundreds of people, finally, someone that Chen Hao was familiar with appeared. At this point, Chen Hao also realized that the order of appearance seemed to have been deliberately adjusted. Every 50 to 60 people to about 100 people, there would be an expert appearing to stimulate everyone's eyes. The skinny monkey, Ao Qian, was undoubtedly the stimulator. Monkey, go for it. Chen Hao directly stood up exaggeratedly and shouted enthusiastically at Ao Qian, who had appeared on the stage. Monkey, come out with the highest. Fight for glory with us. After seeing the fatty's exaggerated actions, Guoda, a member of the Dripping Blood Battle team, also shouted loudly. Chapter 1189. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Ao Qian had requested to join the Carnage Battle team because of Chen Hao. Although at that time, Su Tao and the others could faintly feel that the skinny monkey wearing strange clothes was definitely not weak, compared to them, he was definitely not strong. Su Tao and the rest were not very enthusiastic about his request to join. Of course, they would not reject him. After all, Ao Qian's strength would not drag them down. His combat strength was close to theirs, and he was definitely one of the best in this batch of testers. Don't worry. Ao Qianren turned his head and smiled proudly as he spoke. Boom. Boom boom boom. Without giving the crowd any time to wait, the moment Ao Qian stepped into the testing device, he punched out. He arrived with his body and struck the testing device. He did not stop at all and continuously punched out. The frequency was so fast that it caused everyone present to frown slightly. However, in just an instant, everyone was shocked. Numbers. After Ao Qian's continuous punches, the star cores lit up one by one, and the numbers on the testing device kept changing. 1980, 1981, 1985, 1983, 1982, the numbers were flashing rapidly, but they were stable at around 1983, blinding countless people. No one had expected that such a skinny guy like Ao Qian would have such a terrifying attack power. Just by looking at the frequency of Ao Qian's attacks, they knew that this guy did not use any divine ability at all. He was just relying on his physical strength, true yuan, and soul power. However, his average attack power was close to the standard of a top academy's disciple. Damn. Monkey is actually so strong. What a terrifying physical strength. Captain, we've picked up a treasure. I'm afraid Monkey is even stronger than Fatty. Yeah, if Monkey uses his divine ability, his power will definitely skyrocket, right? He is indeed unexpectedly strong, but I'm afraid that's impossible. Otherwise, Monkey would have used it. If I'm not wrong, this should be a divine ability that excludes others. It will be very difficult for him to use other divine abilities. Let's see how strong his final attack is. Captain Su Tao, who was obviously more knowledgeable than the rest, said to everyone as he looked at Ao Qian. I knew this kid was not simple, but I still underestimated him. Fatty was indeed a little surprised under his excited appearance. Unlike Su Tao's judgment, Chen Hao was very clear that Ao Qian did not use his divine ability at all. His attacks were completely based on his strength, and there was no divine ability added to them. Chen Hao believed that if Ao Qian used any divine ability, his attack power would definitely increase by at least 30%. What did that mean? That was the attack power of a top academy's disciple art? That was under the premise that it was based on the basis of the percentage. Chi. After Ao Qian's after 99 punches, he's after Ao Qian's translation after his. His blood translation Ao, blood and blood and his translation his translation underscore translation to translation boom boom boom. 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000, 9,500, 10,000, fuck. Fatty Li Yuan jumped up in anger, and his eyeballs almost fell to the ground. There was no such thing as the most shocking, only more shocking. It had always been Chen Hao who gave others this feeling, but now, Ao Qian had finally let Chen Hao taste what it meant to be awesome and unbelievable. 10842. This was the final number of Ao Qian's strongest attack power. Originally, the average attack power was around 1,983, But after the final attack, the average attack power had increased to 2071 after 100 attacks. The strongest attack power was 5 times the average attack power, so the final attack power test result was calculated according to 2 times the average attack power, which was 4,142. The bottom line for a top academy's attack power was only 2,000. Ao Qian's attack power had actually reached 4,142. Based on this alone, Ao Qian was at the top even in the top academies. How could Chen Hao not be shocked? Even Ling Feng, who was in the limelight, looked at Ao Qian in shock. Although Ling Feng had the Esper ability, it was different from Chen Hao's. He could only see that Chen Hao's appearance was not his true self, but he could not see what his true self looked like. Because of this, he could not see how special Ao Qian was. Ling Feng did not want to admit it, but he knew that even if he used all his strength, he would not be able to achieve such an attack power. At the same time, Gu Chan, the 12 direct disciples in charge of recording, and the 4 direct disciples who did not stand out in the crowd were all dumbfounded. No one had expected Ao Qian's attack power to be so heaven-defying. Could it be that this kid is the one who hid his strength the most? Gu Chan and the others couldn't be sure. But now, the direct disciples who should have been sent out had already been sent out. If Ao Qian hid his strength too well, they really had no way to stop him from getting first place in the test. Of course, it was still too early to say. This was just the first test of the foundation test. So powerful. Ao Qian, you're so powerful. Ao Qian returned to his position under the dumbfounded gazes of the 5 members of the Carnage Battle team. His face shone with undisguised smugness. He shook his head and threw a flirtatious glance at the shocked and worshipful In Susu. Fat bro, I'm good, right? At this time, Ao Qian sent a voice transmission to Chen Hao arrogantly. Fuck, you're not just good. You're too strong. No, I just don't want to embarrass you, fat bro. I believe that if you don't hold back, you'll definitely make me explode. Ao Qian said. Ao Qian, Chen Hao, and the Carnage Battle team's voice transmissions were all at the same time. Because of this, Ao Qian's words stunned the 5 of them. Was the skinny monkey being humble, or did he really see that the fatty was more powerful? Fuck, you're flattering me. Your attack power would be at the top level even in a top academy, right? Who do you think I am? The most? Chen Hao said. Fat bro, can we discuss something? Ao Qian suddenly interrupted Chen Hao. His expression was wretched, shameless, and obscene. At the same time, he cut off the connection between Carnage Battle team and the others. What's the matter? Give me the first place. I know that Fat Bro was a little hesitant, but in the end, you didn't hesitate to expose yourself and take first place. Tisk, do you think that the first place in the University of Dehua was set up for the 2 of us? Chen Hao frowned slightly. Chapter 1190. Cough, of course not. Ling Feng and the other geniuses the Academy will definitely arrange should also be very strong. But I have confidence that I can handle them. Only you, Brother Fatty, we are good brothers. How can we fight over a small number one? That will hurt our relationship. Ao Qian looked seriously in the direction of Chen Hao and transmitted his voice. Chen Hao's eyes widened and he had the urge to vomit blood. What was this? If good brothers fight, it will hurt our relationship. Give it to me, your big brother. Damn it, you said all the good things and you get all the benefits. Can you be any more shameless? Chen Hao's fat face trembled as he stared at Ao Qian with disdain. Looks like Brother Fatty really wants to be number one. I was just testing you. Brother Fatty, don't mind me. Brothers should settle accounts clearly. Let's compete fairly. Ao Qian awkwardly rubbed his nose and looked at Chen Hao without the slightest avoidance. Number one, no matter what, I will fight for it. Then let's fight. Seeing the fighting spirit in Ao Qian's eyes, Chen Hao's fat face revealed a slight smile. His narrowed eyes flashed with 2 sharp crystal lights. It had been a long time since Chen Hao's true self had undergone nirvana and returned to the great thousand ancient chaotic world. He had not met any challenging opponents, especially those of the same realm. After coming to the great world of Xian Di, Chen Hao did not have too many thoughts because of Xi Xian. It was also because of this that although he knew that there were stronger existences, Chen Hao did not approach. But now Ling Feng, Ao Qian, and the other experts that Chen Hao had already detected in his perception made Chen Hao feel a passion that had not appeared in a long time. Fight. Geniuses of the same realm collided. A battle of strength, a battle of fortune. Ao Qian approached like a little brother, but the fighting spirit and ambition in his eyes completely awakened Chen Hao's passion that had not appeared in a long time. Brother Fatty, we brothers can fight, but it won't hurt our relationship. No matter who wins or loses, it's all because of ability, and we are brothers, Ao Qian suddenly said again. Of course. Fatty bro, since you've decided to fight for first place, then you should observe the direct disciples of Dehua Academy. Although Ling Feng is quite strong, the real threat is definitely not him. A potential value of more than 2,300 in the top academies, you can easily find a bunch of them. Every year, the genius of the direct line of descent that emerges from Dehua Academy will definitely be chosen because of him. That's not necessarily true. Maybe it's because of you. Moreover, I can tell you now that Ling Feng isn't as simple as you think. That potential value, do you think it's because he didn't hide it? Don't forget that there are some people who are still very powerful in the eyes of others even if they hide, just like me. Chen Hao said to Ao Qian telepathically as he looked at the cultivators who were taking the test. That's impossible, right? With a potential value of more than 2,000, it's hard to hide anything. There's no need to hide a little, and it's impossible to hide too much. If you hide too much, you can be a top genius in a top academy. Why would you come here to be a chicken head? Believe it or not. I'm just saying it casually, Chen Hao said. Ao Qian's words weren't without reason. After all, some people would rather be a chicken head than a phoenix tail, which was why they chose a lower grade academy. The potential value that Ling Feng had already revealed was obviously that he wanted to be a chicken head in Dehua Academy. With a potential value of more than 2,300, there wasn't much meaning to it if it was 1 or 200 or 300 higher. There was also no need to hide it. If it was much higher, he would be a top existence in a top academy. Why would he come to a top academy? However, Chen Hao was certain that Ling Feng was hiding a lot, the ultimate form of the Great Change technique, the special ability of his eyes, and it was extremely likely that he was related to the legendary Lord of Soaring Wind. How could such a person be so simple? Interesting. It seems that the direct line of descent of a top academy is definitely not inferior to the top geniuses of a top academy. Chen Hao thought to himself as he once again released his consciousness and sensed the aura of the cultivators present. The great world of Xiandi had 3,000 main planets, and each main planet only had one top academy. The top academies were all existences that transcended regions. However, it was also because of this reason that the top academies had more complete control over the planets they were on. Then, how could the direct line of descent of a genius nurtured from a young age be weak? Moreover, the nature of the direct line of descent of a genius couldn't be changed at will. With Ao Qian in front, the candidates behind him couldn't cause any more waves. Even if there were experts appearing continuously among the thousands of people, none of them could be compared to Ao Qian. They couldn't even catch up to him. He was truly ahead of everyone else. This was also because teacher Gu Chan and the Academy's intelligence department hadn't collected any reliable information previously. Their judgment of Ao Qian's strength was completely unreliable. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a powerhouse like Ao Qian who was directly within the top 1,000. More than 6,000 people appeared one after another. Carnage battle teams Su Tao, Gong Chao, Guida, Wang Chengfeng, and In Susu appeared one after the other when there were only about 1,000 people left. Each of them was as if they had eaten chicken blood. They performed exceedingly well and obtained good results. Captain Su Tao's attack power could definitely rank in the top 50. The other 4 could also rank in the top 100. They were much better than they had expected. Moreover, the 5 people's attitude towards the skinny monkey Ao Qian was 100 times, no, 1,000 times more enthusiastic than before Ao Qian had exploded. Especially In Susu, who looked at Ao Qian with stars in her eyes. This made Fatty despise her fiercely in his heart. However, it had to be said that this was human nature. The strong were respected. It was the same everywhere. Buzz. Finally, after dozens of characters that were slightly above average tested, Chen Hao's forehead suddenly rippled. At this time, Chen Hao's name and the information of his potential value appeared on the top screen of the testing device. Li Yuan, potential value 988. The other items were pending. Brother Fatty, don't be too far behind me. Fatty, explode. Fatty, don't hide anything. Brothers, we have high hopes for you. Ao Qian and the 5 members of Carnage Battle Team were all excited. Although the 5 members of Carnage Battle Team had high hopes for Fatty, they didn't believe in him as much as Ao Qian. From the beginning, Ao Qian had called Fatty Brother Fatty. That enthusiasm was definitely not fake. Even now, after he had exploded with such terrifying strength, he still called Chen Hao Brother Fatty. There was no change. This made the 5 members of Carnage Battle Team feel that Fatty was probably hiding his strength. Otherwise, why would Ao Qian be willing to call himself a little brother? What they didn't know was that Ao Qian had indeed admitted his inferiority from the beginning. However, it wasn't because of battle power or talent, but because of wretchedness. Chapter 1191. Fatty, who had defeated Wan Yishui and entered the top 100 of the Real Martial Arts Pavilion, was undoubtedly one of the most anticipated candidates. Because of this, even though Fatty's attack power should be his biggest weakness, he was still arranged to appear in the last 300 or so people. Furthermore, he was obviously treated as an expert who would appear every few dozen people to adjust the atmosphere. Carnage Battle Team, Ao Qian, and the rest were cheering for Fatty. Even Ling Feng and the great Hua Direct disciples who had hidden their auras had locked onto Fatty's aura. My greatest opponent should be this little Fatty. Ling Feng's lips curled into an evil smile as he thought to himself. Ling Feng, who did not care about Ao Qian before, still did not care about Ao Qian at this moment. Although he admitted that he was inferior in terms of attack power and knew that Ao Qian had hidden his real aura, Ling Feng was still most concerned about the seemingly harmless Fatty. How could Fatty's attack power be weak if he could cultivate the Great Change Art to its final form? To be able to cultivate it to its final form, his physical body naturally had the ability to expand by tens of thousands of times. This meant that the basic strength of his physical body was enough to prove that attack power was not Fatty's weakness, not to mention the addition of true origin. To be able to comprehend the Great Change Art to the extreme, how could Fatty's comprehension be weak? If Fatty's comprehension was not weak, how could his heavenly law and divine ability be weak? If both were not weak, how could his attack power be weak? Furthermore, Fatty had cultivated the Great Change Art to the extreme of his own realm. To be precise, he had surpassed the extreme of his own realm. Ling Feng did not even need to think to know that Fatty was not simple. Fatty, Ao Qian, and a few direct disciples. The old man did not make me come here for nothing. I have underestimated a first-rate academy, Qi. Looking at the countless gazes gathered on him, Chen Hao's fat face revealed a harmless smile. His fat buttocks suddenly flung out an afterimage and disappeared from the spot. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in the protective enchantment of the testing device. Standing still, Chen Hao, who had already made up his mind, had a crystal flash between his eyebrows. The Overlord's spear, which had expanded by several times, appeared in his hand. Boom! At the same time, the aura around him finally erupted like a volcano. Hiss, 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 hiss. In an instant, endless Tao Law immortal light gushed out, and a majestic and terrifying Tao mark pressure swept out. Essence, Qi, spirit, vital essence, and blood Qi directly condensed into a straight, solid, 7-colored brilliance that shot into the sky. Under the infusion of the terrifying energy, the Overlord's spear began to tremble violently. A blood-red spear light spurted out on its own, as if it was swallowing and spitting along with Chen Hao's breathing. Chen Hao hadn't even made a move yet, but the crowd was already stirred up by his aura. Fuck, It can't be. Fuck, what a powerful aura. Damn fatty, you're amazing. Rub rub rub. I knew that I was hiding the most shameless, the most wretched, and the most shameless. As expected, this motherfucker, I'm afraid he's not much weaker than me. Exclamations of surprise burst out from the mouths of countless cultivators. Even though Fatty hadn't completed his attack, just from the aura that Fatty was releasing, everyone knew that his attack power was definitely not Fatty's weakness. It definitely surpassed the majority of the people present. As for how strong he was, they could only see the results of the test. In any case, this aura was extremely terrifying, extremely sharp, extremely berserk, and extremely terrifying. Ling Feng and Ao Qian knew that Fatty was hiding a lot, but when they saw Fatty truly releasing his aura, they were still shocked in their hearts. Since I, Lord Fatty, am going to take first place, all of you will stand to the side and tremble. With the Overlord spear in hand, the arrogance hidden in Qin Hao's bones couldn't help but blossom. It was as if he had grasped the world, and only he was supreme, revealing his domineering aura. 80% of my strength. Fatty moved, but no one knew that Fatty, who seemed to have reached his peak state, was silently controlling his own strength the moment he stabbed out with his spear. 80%. This was something that Qin Hao had never thought of. As a newcomer, keeping a low profile and restraining himself was a good thing, but because of the appearance of Ling Feng and Ao Qian, it had aroused Qin Hao's passion and competitive spirit. Along the way, he had never tasted defeat. With this kind of heart of an expert, if he didn't meet a challenge, he would lose. It didn't matter, since he had hidden his strength, and it definitely wouldn't affect his influence. However, with the appearance of Ao Qian and Ling Feng, Qin Hao didn't want to lose. Victory and defeat were commonplace in battle. Victory was not arrogant, defeat was not discouraged, and failure was the mother of success. These sayings were all very correct, but it had to be said that these were all words to comfort the losers, to allow the losers to stand up again. Winners, those who were always victorious and undefeated, would form influence and even general influence as their victories increased. This was a kind of state of mind, a state of mind that was sure to win. When facing an expert, it could explode and break through the limits of the state of mind. If Qin Hao lost to the provocative Ling Feng and Ao Qian, who wanted a fair fight, and they were both in the same realm, then the influence that he had formed over tens of thousands of years, the heart of an expert, would be tainted with flaws. Boom. Chi. One by one, the star core crystals lit up from the bottom to the top. Everyone's gaze also followed, finally stopping at the top of the testing device. 1840. Amazing. This fatty's acting skills are too good. This is called weak attack power? Fuck, it's not even 100 points lower than Ao Qian's, currently the second highest. Hee. Luckily Brother Fatty is a bit lower than me. Otherwise, Brother Fatty would have to use all his strength to deal with the rest. When everyone saw the number of Qin Hao's first attack, they were completely sure that the Fatty and one Yishui's battle had been extremely pretentious. Ao Qian, on the other hand, let out a slight sigh of relief. The first attack was 80 points lower than the average of his previous 99 attacks. It was basically impossible to surpass him. He did not think that the Fatty's strongest attack would be more than 5 times the basic attack. Damn, Fatty's physical strength clearly hasn't reached its peak, and it feels like something is missing. Fuck, it's already over 1800. Attack power is indeed my biggest weakness. Could it be that in this lousy first-rate academy, I'll have to expose everything? Unlike Ao Qian, who only intuitively knew that the wretched Fatty was hiding a lot, Ling Feng's special ability allowed him to see more. Fuck. 1840. I can't lose at the starting line. Whatever, I'll raise it a little more. No, what if Ling Feng and De Hua's direct descendants are stronger? 90%. Boom. After Qin Hao saw the value of his first attack, he only hesitated for a moment before raising his strength and attacking again. Chapter 1192. Boom. Boom boom boom. 2046, 2058, 2070, 2060, 2080, In an instant. In just an instant, countless cultivators cried out in surprise, and as the fatty continued to attack rapidly, they cried out one after another. The basic attack power actually increased from the first attack's 1840 to around 2070. 2070, even without the bonus of the last attack, had already reached the requirements of a top academy. Fatty is really too fierce, too shameless. His absolute strength is so strong, but when he fought with Wan Ishue, he didn't even attack once. Could it be that he's protective of the fairer sex? Damn, can I be more shameless? The first attack was actually just a test. What the fuck? Is he in his strongest state now? Ao Qian felt that his balls were broken, and he wasn't sure if the fatty had used all his strength or if he was still holding back. After the first attack, it increased by more than 200 points. It was obvious that the first attack was just a test, and it also meant that the fatty had never participated in the Academy's foundation test before. Damn, looks like it'll be difficult for me to keep the first place in attack power. If I knew earlier, I would have been completely exposed. Damn it. If I don't double my strongest attack power, I still have hope for first place. Ao Qian's strongest attack was 5 times the basic attack power, and the final result of the attack power was calculated as 2 times the average. This was basically the highest increase, and Ao Qian was still a little confident about this. Let's see how strong his strongest attack is. Ling Feng and the 4 great Hua faction geniuses stared closely at the fatty's figure as he attacked wildly with his spear. There was no other way. Among the people present, only they had the strength to compete for first place. Especially the 4 great Hua faction geniuses, their mission was to kill anyone who could take first place. In the entire Big Word Academy, the top 10 of the 10 pavilions basically wouldn't fall into the hands of outsiders who weren't from the great Hua faction. Unless they met an extremely heaven-defying existence, but this kind of situation rarely happened. But this time, the 4 great Hua faction geniuses, as well as Teacher Gu Chan who was in charge of the test, were all faintly worried. The target they wanted to intercept was originally Ling Feng, who was judged to be the strongest. But now, a skinny monkey, Ao Qian, and a fat man, Li Yuan, both displayed extremely heaven-defying offensive power. This was especially true for Fatty. He originally thought that his attack power was his biggest flaw, but now that he no longer had that flaw, it would be hard for him to get a low score. His potential value was now meaningless, it was completely hidden. After the ranking competition, he would definitely have to retest his potential value. 90, 91, 92. As Fatty's attacks increased, everyone became nervous. Even though he knew that it had nothing to do with him, being able to see such an expert was still an exciting thing. Would the skinny monkey Ao Qian continue to look down on the crowd, or would the fatty Li Yuanrong step forward? Let's see Fatty's final attack. Motherfucker, since it's already exploded, then let's be even more ruthless. Let's do something even fiercer. After 92 attacks, Fatty once again experienced the feeling of being the center of attention, causing countless people to scream in shock, tremble, and pain in the balls. This feeling seemed to be very pleasurable. It was so pleasurable that all the pores on his body opened up, and he was filled with passion. Even the emotions hidden deep within his heart could be released. There was no doubt that this was an extremely wonderful thing for a cultivator. It was also a state of mind that would allow one to tap into one's potential to the greatest extent. Thus, in his excitement, Fatty could not hold it in. Lord Fatty, the god of slaughter Chen Hao, there was no such thing as the most flirtatious, only more flirtatious. When the 92 attacks were completed, the more excited and expectant the crowd suddenly let out surprised cries. Fatty actually kept his overlord spear. What the hell? Even if he wanted to change his weapon, shouldn't he wait until the last attack? Why did he keep his overlord spear now? Roar! Rumble! Chen Hao roared, and did not give the crowd too much time to be puzzled. He suddenly stomped his feet, and his fat body immediately shot towards the testing machine like a human tank. However, in the instant that the electric sparks burst out, what made everyone stare with their eyes wide open was that Fatty's butt was facing the testing machine. Chi. But divine art, one but to break the world. rumble, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, Fatty's arrogant voice resounded in everyone's ears. His fat butt, which was emitting boundless runic light and a mysterious aura, directly slammed into the testing machine. In an instant, one star core after another lit up, and the number of stars rose at an astonishing speed. Although everyone had the urge to burst out laughing when they heard Fatty's words and saw Fatty's appearance, they could not laugh when they saw the number rising crazily. 2,000, 4,000, 6,000. Compared to Ao Qian's last attack, the speed at which the stars lit up was much faster. Although the results had not been shown, Ao Qian and the others knew that Fatty's but divine art was too fucking awesome, and it absolutely crushed Ao Qian's strongest attack. However, Fatty had not used his last attack, and this was clearly only the 93rd attack. The strongest attack, which used the strongest divine art to produce the strongest attack, would basically consume all of its energy. Even if there was some left, it would be very limited. Why did Fatty use it at this moment? Could it be that the 92 attacks had consumed too much energy, and he could not continue with his strongest attack, so he had to use it earlier? There seemed to be no other possibility apart from this reason. This meant that Fatty did not control his energy well previously. In less than a breath's time, the results were out. Fatty's 93rd attack, 12,222. It was close to 6 times his basic attack, just a little bit more and it would be 6 times his original attack. His huge but once again emitted a resplendent light of runes. Regardless of whether it was the energy fluctuations or the mysterious aura fluctuations, they did not show any signs of weakening compared to the previous time. Oh my god, ultimate attack combo. Too strong. This Fatty's energy is unfathomable, as deep as the ocean. At this point, even an idiot would know that it was not that Fatty did not control his energy well, but that he had enough energy and was preparing to use his ultimate attack combo. Furthermore, it was not just 2 attacks, but 8. Although this kind of thing was not common in the great world of CND, it definitely happened. However, this was the first time it had happened in Dehua University. Boom. Boom. 12255. 12243. Fatty used his divine art of buttocks again and again, and the numbers on the testing device froze time and time again, and the cultivators present were on the verge of cramping. Especially the 2,000 people who had personally witnessed the battle between Fatty and Wan Yishui, they were trembling in fear. If such a valiant but really pressed against her, wouldn't Sister Shui be crushed into pieces? Chapter 1193. This is the last time. Let's all have a good time. For the last time, Fatty squinted his eyes, revealing a hint of arrogance and wretchedness. Woo! After more than 12,000 points for 7 consecutive times, it was finally the last time. Everyone present simply did not expect Fatty to have any other changes. It was already quite rare for him to use his ultimate move consecutively. How could there be any changes in the last attack? However, the roar that should have appeared from the last attack suddenly became a wolf's howl that reverberated through the 9 heavens. The Fatty, who had stretched his neck and howled, was suddenly blown up like a balloon. His already large buttocks expanded by more than 3 times. As he howled, immortal light bloomed, and Dao laws surged, crashing into the testing device. Bam! Rumble! The entire testing palace shook violently from the terrifying power that erupted from Fatty's butt. The star cores instantly emitted a bright light, and finally reached 17,835 points. Dumbfounded. Everyone present was dumbfounded. Their mouths were wide open, and they were dumbfounded. Other than the sound of gasping, there was no other noise. Just as Fatty had said in his heart when he used this move, everyone was climaxing. Their thoughts were momentarily sluggish, and they were almost in a dream. 9 restrictions? I'm so close to 9 restrictions. After a long while, Teacher Gu Chan's shocked voice was the first to appear in everyone's ears. Crash. Immediately, the entire testing palace fell into an uproar. Brother Fatty, can you not be so fierce? 9th limit. The basic attack is more than 2,000 points, and the strongest attack is more than 17,000 points. More than 8 times. The divine buttocks technique is really too strong. Brother Fatty, you must teach me. Ao Qian had already rushed to Chen Hao's side and said to Chen Hao with a face full of envy, jealousy, and hatred. Fatty's first 92 attacks were his basic attack, and his average attack was around 2070. And now, Fatty's divine buttocks technique's strongest attack had reached 17,235 points. He was only a little more than 1,000 points away from breaking through to the 9th limit. This was definitely an extremely heaven-defying existence. Even if Ao Qian exposed his full strength, he was destined to be no match for Fatty in terms of attack power. The average damage of 100 hits was 2,939, while the strongest was 17835, which was more than 5 times the average. Fatty's final test result was 5,878. After a full 2 minutes, Fatty's final result was displayed on the screen. However, this result caused countless boos. Teacher Gu Chan. At this moment, the captain of the Carnage battle team, Su Tao, suddenly soared into the air and shouted at the examiner, Teacher Gu Chan, "This kind of calculation is unfair to our Blood Carnage member, Li Yuan." Before Li Yuan came to take the test, he had never participated in any of the sect's basic tests, so he doesn't know the specific calculation method. That's right, Li Yuan didn't need to use any bullshit from the 93rd to the 99th attack. It's the law of the divine ability. He only needed to use the last attack to increase his attack power by 8 times, which is 5 times. In Susu added. It's indeed a bit of a loss. That's right, Fatty clearly doesn't know the rules. Following this, many cultivators, both familiar and unfamiliar, complained about Fatty's injustice. If the strongest attack was 5 times the average attack power, the final result would be twice the average. 6 times the average would be 2. 5 times, 7 times the average would be 3 times, and 8 times the average would be 5 times. After 5 times the average attack power, every increment of 1 point would increase by 0.5. This was definitely a huge difference. If Fatty's 93rd to 99th attacks were all around 2070, and the last attack remained the same, then his average 100 hits would be 2,228 points, and his strongest 17835 would be more than 8 times the average. His final result would be 7,798 points. This was a difference of nearly 2,000 points. Chen Hao, on the other hand, was stunned by everyone's words. He had never thought that there would be such a thing. Motherfucker, Chen Hao had clearly heard what Gu Chan had said before the test. The original version only said that when the strongest attack was 5 times the average attack, the results would be 2 times the average attack, and that was it. This undoubtedly meant that the highest attack power would be 2 times the average attack power. Therefore, Chen Hao had done some simple calculations starting from the 93rd attack power. He had maintained his strongest attack power at more than 5 times the average attack power. But from the looks of it now, this was obviously not the case. Sorry, this is my mistake. Before the test started, I thought everyone understood and didn't explain in detail. I really didn't expect an increase of more than 5 times the average attack power. However, the test results have been recorded, and there's no reason to retest. Little Fatty, just admit that you're unlucky. Although Gu Chan admitted his mistake, he didn't feel awkward about Chen Hao admitting that he was unlucky. It was as if he was talking about something that couldn't be more normal, and there was no need to talk about compensation. What could Chen Hao do? He could only admit that he was unlucky. He could only blame himself for knowing too little about the rules, and for being too cocky. He had indeed made everyone excited, but he had stupidly lost nearly 2,000 points. In reality, it wasn't that the test couldn't be retested. The record could be completely refreshed, but Gu Chan and the people in charge of the test couldn't possibly retest Fatty. What had been thought to be Fatty's weakness had become his strength. What would happen to the other strengths, such as speed and endurance? If the 4 geniuses of the direct line were all defeated by Fatty, then Gu Chan, who was in charge of collecting information on the contestants and probing the contestants' abilities, would not be able to escape responsibility. Of course, he wouldn't have to bear any heavy punishment. After all, the appearance of a genius from the direct line to prevent the contestants from getting first place was just the Academy wanting to make the best use of their resources. If someone from the direct line really obtained it, it would prove that the person was indeed strong and worth having. If they could sign a long-term contract, it would be even less of a problem. The test continued. After dozens of people, Ling Feng finally appeared. Ling Feng, whose potential value was ridiculously high, finally obtained a very strong attack power score. However, because Ao Qian and Fatty were in front of him, it didn't cause a stir. There was no helping it. The attack power that Fatty and Ao Qian displayed was really too impressive, especially Fatty. Ling Feng used all his strength, and the final attack power score was 3,984. It was still more than 100 points lower than Ao Qian's 4142. This was within his expectations. After that, every dozens of people, an expert would appear. Without a doubt, at this point, the experts that appeared were all geniuses from the Big Words Academy's direct line. They had been hidden away for many years and hadn't come out. When they came out, they wanted to shine, but they didn't get their wish. Similarly, Fatty Li Yuan and Skinny Monkey Ao Qian stole the limelight. However, the three experts that appeared one after the other also had attack power scores of about 4,000, about the same as Ling Feng. They were slightly weaker than Ao Qian, but the gap between them and Fatty was still a bit large. Chapter 1194. Xue Fian, Potential Value, 1,000. It was finally the last of the 6,000 people. There was no suspense at all. This female disciple called Xue Fian was definitely one of the 4 direct disciples. Moreover, she was the only female disciple among the 4. The fact that Master Gu Chan had arranged for her to be the last to appear meant that she was probably the strongest of the 4. This was out of everyone's expectations. No one, including Chen Hao, had sensed that this woman, who had obviously disguised her appearance and aura, was a direct disciple. Moreover, she was probably the strongest one. Xue Fian's figure did not move at all. She directly turned into a stream of light and flew into the protective barrier of the testing device. Only then did the glimmer of golden light in the depths of Fatty's eyes slowly dissipate. He could not help but rub his chin. There was no other way. After the third of the 4 direct disciples appeared, Chen Hao could no longer sense any powerful existences among the remaining 40 to 50 people. However, according to the order of appearance, there should be a final character among the last 40 to 50 people to appear. After all, Master Gu Chan had arranged the appearance order according to the situation of the auction. An expert would appear every 10 to 100 people. Furthermore, the experts would become stronger and stronger. It did not matter if there was an expert among the experts. At most, the overall situation would become slightly better. However, with Chen Hao's powerful senses, he actually could not sense who the expert was. When there were only 8 people left, Chen Hao finally could not hold back his curiosity and secretly activated his fiery eyes of truth. Once he activated it, the fatty's wretched little eyes could no longer move away from the only female cultivator among the group. Fatty couldn't be blamed for this. This disguised woman didn't even have a primordial Yin body. Her disguised appearance and aura made it impossible for any man to have any desire. Fatty didn't take it seriously at all. That was why he activated his fiery golden eyes to check. But who knew? There was actually a woman in the world who willingly disguised herself as someone who was 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times uglier. This was truly a rare and exotic existence, especially since this woman had lost her primordial Yin body. She shouldn't be like this. Everyone loves beauty. In a situation where there was no great threat, who would be willing to disguise themselves as an ugly freak? However, this wasn't the reason why Fatty couldn't move his eyes away. This kind of woman could at most make the fatty have the most normal reaction of a man. There would not be any ripples in his heart. What really surprised Chen Hao was that every inch of this woman's skin was engraved with extremely mysterious runes. Her body had become a tool. Moreover, Chen Hao and Hu Meinyang's bodies were much more complete. The densely packed runes should have looked very strange, but as they slowly operated, they seemed to have condensed into a faint mist around their bodies. It was hazy and indistinct. Even Chen Hao's eyes of fire and gold could only see its hazy appearance, making it mysterious and alluring. No wonder I couldn't sense anything unusual about this woman. Her body has become an artifact, and she has condensed so many complicated and profound runes. Her ability to hide her aura must be extremely powerful. Moreover, this should be an inheritance rune. Otherwise, the Daoyuo Golden Wonderland wouldn't have been able to be condensed. Chen Hao thought to himself. Clang. Just as Chen Hao was thinking, Xue Fian suddenly unsheathed a treasured sword in front of everyone's eyes. Without any accumulation of power, Xue Fian became one with her sword and slashed out. Ding. Rumble. 1810. 1810. 1810. The interval between each of Xue Fian's moves was exactly the same, like a meticulously calculated clock. The error was to the point of microseconds. However, what was more shocking was that the attack value of each of her moves did not fluctuate at all. It was fixed at 1810. Such a value was naturally inferior to that of Chen Hao and Ao Qian. However, each of her attacks was stable at the same number, without any error. It was too shocking. What kind of freakish realm did she have to have such perfect control? She's definitely the strongest of the 4 direct descendants. I didn't expect her to be a woman, and a woman. Yeah, she's very good at hiding her strength. Moreover, she has lost her primordial Yin body. It's really unexpected. Xue Fian. Her name sounds nice, but her real appearance. I think she's definitely not bad. She must have been occupied, right? Of course. She was placed last by Master Gu Chan. She's a direct descendant of Dehua University. Of course, it's impossible for her to be promoted through dual cultivation. She must have been occupied. Brother, what do you mean by occupied? Chen Hao, who was once again shocked by Xue Fian's precise attack interval and attack value, could not help but ask when he heard the discussion around him. Brother Fatty, occupied means that someone has been occupied in advance. If the person is not a big shot, he or she must be a genius with more potential than Xue Fian. In short, it's to tell everyone that she's already taken. In the great world of Xiandi, such a situation is called occupied. He or she must have obtained her primordial Yin body but did not rely on dual cultivation. Xue Fian must be in such a situation. The cultivator beside him said enthusiastically. It was a good thing to be able to befriend a genius like Fatty. It's just as I thought. She's a big shot, a super genius? Chen Hao smiled and shook his head. Otherwise, Xue Fian would not be so ugly. This must be requested by the person who occupied the spot. That's why she's so ugly. We don't know how she looks like in real life, but she's definitely a beauty. Brother Fatty, you're very strong. Xue Fian is obviously the strongest direct descendant of Dehua University. However, her attack power is obviously not as good as yours. That's not necessarily true. If I'm not wrong, I'm going to be surpassed in attack power. Chen Hao's fat face showed a puzzling smile as he looked at Xue Fian, who was in the middle of the test. How is that possible? Xue Fian's basic attack power is only 1,810 points. Brother Fatty's score is 5,878 points. Although it's not the real score, it's impossible for her to surpass you. Brother Fatty's real score is definitely above 7,500 points. Such a precise attack rhythm and attack power. It's obvious that she has perfect control over it. You'll know when she explodes with her final attack. Chen Hao narrowed his eyes and pretended to be mysterious. Chen Hao was telling the truth. Since the opponent's goal was not to waste the strongest resources on a non-direct descendant who could leave at any time, it was impossible for Xue Fian to lose in the beginning. After all, Chen Hao knew that he had already displayed his strength in other aspects. If he relaxed even a little bit, his opponent would not dare to ignore it. Chapter 1195. Xue Fian, on the other hand, was able to control her basic attack power to a certain number without any deviation. It was obvious that she had reserved some of her strength. She would definitely release the strongest attack from the inheritance rune during the final attack so that her strongest attack power and average attack power would reach the result she wanted. This was the problem that Chen Hao did not know about and did not care about. It was not the case that the stronger the average attack power, the higher the result. It also depended on the difference between the strongest attack power and the average attack power. After a while, Xue Fian had completed 99 attacks and maintained the number at 1810. Buzz. At this moment, Xue Fian's rhythm, which had not changed at all like a precise instrument, finally changed. The moment she retreated, her aura suddenly shook, and endless celestial light and pressure surged out from her body, enveloping the surroundings. Fuck, this woman is probably going to surpass me. Ao Qian became slightly nervous at this moment. He was determined to get the first place. In Ao Qian's heart, Fatty Li Yuan was undoubtedly the strongest competitor for the first place. However, that was the conclusion he had reached after estimating the aura of all the cultivators present. Xue Fian's superb camouflage ability did not catch his attention at all. However, Xue Fian's calmness, composure, and precise control during the first basic test made Ao Qian realize that she was not inferior to Fatty Li Yuan. 6 times is definitely not a problem. When Xue Fian's aura became more and more terrifying and she was about to make the final attack, Ao Qian came to a conclusion in his heart. If the strongest attack power was 6 times the average, then the final result would be 5 times the average. In Ao Qian's opinion, she would definitely surpass him and could even be compared to Fatty Li Yuan. What a powerful camouflage ability. Her inheritance rune? Just like Ao Qian, Ling Feng had made the same mistake. Only when Xue Fian was the only one left did he realize the opponent's powerful disguise ability. At this time, what shocked Ling Feng even more was that Xue Fian had clearly reached her peak state. Just as she was about to attack, an unbelievable scene occurred. Under the disguise, every inch of Xue Fian's skin suddenly blossomed with a resplendent light. Whoosh! At the same time, apart from Chen Hao who had already seen through the trick, everyone could not help but exclaim in surprise. Dex? Motherfucker, Fat Bro is going to be crushed into pieces. Ao Qian jumped up. Times. A small first-rate academy actually had such an existence. Damn it. If I don't get first place, won't I be despised to death by that old fellow? Next, I have to go all out. Ling Feng, who had remained calm and confident even when he saw Fatty's attack power skyrocket, truly felt the pressure at this moment. The skinny monkey Ao Qian, the Fatty Li Yuan, and the direct descendant genius Xue Fian, each one was stronger than the other. Bang! Ding! Rumble! Xue Fian's eyes were like 2 sharp swords. Her lips were tightly shut and she still did not make any sound. The moment she gathered her strength to its peak, she immediately attacked. A huge pit appeared at the place where her feet had stepped out. She, who had become one with her sword, seemed to have torn through space. There was almost no gap in time as she bombarded the testing device. The star core lit up and rose rapidly under everyone's shocked and nervous gazes. Finally, it stopped at 15,989. His average attack power was 1,952. The strongest attack power was slightly more than 8 times the average attack power. The final result was 6,832 points. It was slightly more than 1,000 points higher than Chen Hao's. Xue Fian was first in attack power, Chen Hao was second, Ao Qian was third, and Ling Feng was fifth. She was only a few dozen points away from the 4th and 6th place. Everyone knew that Fatty Li Yuan's result could have surpassed Xue Fian's, but everyone had to admit that Xue Fian was first. The reason was simple. Xue Fian's disguised appearance had not changed at all. This also meant that she still had not used her full strength. Otherwise, she would have to reveal her true appearance. Who could determine who was stronger and who was weaker? The second basic test, speed test. Teacher Gu Chan heaved a long sigh of relief when he saw Xue Fian's valiant strength. Without stopping, he immediately announced the start of the second test. Following his words, the attack power tester suddenly blossomed with endless brilliance and disintegrated on its own. The star core that was originally on it suddenly floated out and arranged itself in the barrier. At the same time, runes also condensed in the barrier, forming a completely different space from the previous one. 10 minutes per person. As you go deeper, the number of star cores lit up will increase. The number of star cores you light up in 10 minutes will be your final result. All the attacks you will face will be fake attacks and will not affect you at all. However, you must completely avoid them in order to light up the corresponding star core. Otherwise, you will have to go through the checkpoint again, which will naturally delay your time. You should know that haste makes waste. You should judge for yourself what to do. Alright, let's begin. Buzz. The moment teacher Gu-chan finished speaking, a cultivator's name and information appeared at the top of the tower tablet at the end of the star core. The test had officially begun. Brother Fatty, it's useless no matter how carefully you look. The distribution of these star cores will change every time a new cultivator changes. There is no pattern to speak of, and it won't repeat even if you try millions of times. However, brother, I can teach you a technique that will never deviate from the changes. Ao Qian transmitted his voice to Qin Hao from afar. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. There are a total of 100,000 star cores, corresponding to 100,000 different attack combinations. The 100,000 units are completely unchanged. The only thing that changes is the order in which each unit appears. It's such a simple matter, Fat Bro can figure it out even with his butt. Brother Fatty is awesome, especially my butt. However, I will definitely beat you this time. You're not bragging. You have to beat Ling Feng and Xue Fian first. Chen Hao sat cross-legged, his gaze following the cultivators as they moved. The corresponding attacks of each star core, the cultivators' reactions, the way they dodged, their footwork, the time and position of the attacks, and so on were all in Chen Hao's soul perception. Although he was talking to Ao Qian, his mind was not relaxed at all. Xue Fian's appearance, Ling Feng's unfathomable strength, and Ao Qian's bloodline concealment forced Chen Hao to treat them seriously. Firstly, it was not that simple. He might be concealing something, but Ao Qian, Ling Feng, Xue Fian, and even the other 3 direct descendants were also concealing something. Chen Hao's soul perception was strong, and he had the help of the fiery eyes of truth. However, this did not mean that he could see through everyone. True Yuan, soul power, physical body, bloodline, these were just superficial things. There were also things that could not be sensed through aura, such as the opponent's mystique. Chapter 1196. The Great Teleportation Technique isn't omnipotent. Many places test one's reaction speed and evasion speed. It can change a lot in an instant. Chen Hao saw some of the mysteries of the speed test from the examinees. Unfortunately, the highest number of examinees who managed to light up 1096 stars within the 10 minutes limit was only 1096 stars. It was obvious that it would take a long time to understand more. However, Chen Hao wasn't too concerned about this. If he could familiarize himself with it, he would. If he couldn't, it would all depend on his own judgment. It was ever-changing and everyone was different. Even if he knew the corresponding attack combination of each star core, it wouldn't be very useful. What really mattered was one's strength. The Great Teleportation Technique broke the laws of time and space to fly between 2 points. Under the unpredictable attack direction, it was obvious that the Great Teleportation Technique wouldn't work if he wanted to light up the star cores. This undoubtedly increased the difficulty for Chen Hao. The so-called speed test was obviously not as simple as just speed. Time passed by slowly. One examinee appeared every 10 minutes. To the 4 direct experts, Chen Hao, Ao Qian, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian, the results of the examinees before them weren't enough. Among them, Chen Hao was the only one who was watching the test seriously. Moreover, Chen Hao was more focused on the layout of the star cores and their attack methods. Under the laws of time and space, there were only a few hundred examinees left from the 6,000 examinees. The real experts finally began to appear. Ranked 7th in the strength test, one of the 4 direct disciples from the Big Words College broke the previous record. He lit up 1,982 stars and was close to the standard of a top college. After a few dozen rookies, another genius from the direct disciples took the test. Unfortunately, he wasn't as good as the previous one and only lit up 1,924 stars. Of course, this result was only second to the previous genius from the direct disciples. Ling Feng. It's finally my turn. When Ling Feng's name and information appeared on the screen, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he spoke to himself proudly. Without any hesitation, his entire body flashed like lightning. At this moment, the fatty's eyes narrowed. He was obviously much more serious than before. How many stars can this guy light up? Chen Hao thought to himself. At the same time, Ao Qian, Xue Fian, and the others also became alert. Their expressions became slightly serious and expectant. The potential value that Ling Feng had revealed, as well as the results of the strength test, and more importantly, his confidence and arrogance were all existences that they could not ignore. Buzz buzz buzz. The moment Ling Feng stepped into the barrier, his entire body moved as fast as lightning, twisting and turning, leaving behind afterimages as he moved quickly. In an instant, the star nuclei lit up along with Ling Feng's figure. So fast! At this time, even Chen Hao, who had cultivated the great teleportation technique to the extreme, could not help but be amazed. Fuck, so fast? This reaction, this speed, this change in direction, it was too awesome. Fuck, I'm afraid I'll have to go all out to barely be able to do that, right? Fuck your father. While Chen Hao was shocked, Ao Qian began to curse. Xue Fian and another direct descendant who hadn't taken the test frowned. Clearly, they felt the same pressure as Chen Hao and Ao Qian. I've lost in strength. Who can beat me in speed? The sky steed soaring technique is my best technique, and this is only the first level. If I lose to you, I can find a piece of tofu to kill myself. Tremble, second level. Boom. Ling Feng, who was twisting and turning rapidly, stroked his bangs and laughed in his heart. At this time, his body shook, and his speed increased by another level. Fuck, it can't be? He can still increase his speed. Fuck, he's really amazing. Ao Qian, one of the 4 direct descendants who had not taken the test, Xue Fian, Chen Hao, and all the other cultivators present, including Gu Chan, were no exception. They were indeed trembling. In just a short minute, Ling Feng had lit up 459 star cores at his original speed. This was already very shocking, at least twice as fast as any of the previous ones. However, at this time, this guy's speed of lighting up star cores did not decrease. Instead, it suddenly increased. Third level. At the beginning of the 3rd minute, Ling Feng went crazy again. But this time, he did not increase the speed of lighting up the star nuclei, and only maintained his original speed. But to be able to do this, it was absolutely terrifying. After all, his current speed was already extremely terrifying. As time passed, the Dao mark attacks and other mechanisms would become more and more powerful. Under normal circumstances, the lighting speed would slow down. It's a pity that the Daluo Golden Wonderland can only be cultivated to the 3rd level. Otherwise, this brother will definitely make all of you orgasm together. Chi. Ling Feng pushed himself to the limit, and it could be said that he did not hold back in terms of speed. There was no other way. He had already lost in terms of attack power, and now he had to turn it around. Ling Feng believed that the sky steed soaring technique was not inferior to the great teleportation technique, but was more suitable for speed testing. It was enough for him to obtain first place in the speed test. That was indeed the case. Ling Feng lit up 4,123 star nuclei in 10 minutes. Compared to the 2 direct descendant geniuses who had been tested before, it was more than double. Ao Qian used all his strength and did not hold back. He was just short of revealing his true bloodline inheritance, but he only managed to obtain 3,813 star nuclei. Chen Hao, who was disguised as a fatty, swung his huge butt into 8 pieces. Although it caused a commotion, he still lost to Ling Feng in the end, lighting up 4,012 stones. The last person to test, Xue Fian, shocked Chen Hao and the others once again. She actually lost to Fatty with a difference of 1 point. She did not reveal her true identity, and under the disguise of her aura, she obtained this result. This was enough to prove that Xue Fian could definitely surpass Fatty. And her calm expression, as though she did not care about this result at all, was obviously filled with confidence. On the other hand, Ao Qian was extremely depressed as he sank into torment. He had just arrived at Hua Hua Institute, and he had already revealed his strongest trump card. Wasn't that too embarrassing? But if he did not reveal it, how could he fight for first place? If he did not obtain the top 10 treatment this year, it would be a very embarrassing matter. But if his true identity was revealed, he would lose even more face in the clan. At the same time, Ling Feng, who looked like he did not care, was not as calm as he looked. The strength that Fatty and Xue Fian displayed made him feel immense pressure. He had even used the sky steed soaring technique without holding back, but he only obtained a slight advantage and obtained first place in speed. Xue Fian, who had disguised herself, was actually under a lot of pressure as well. It was just that she had always been expressionless. The only one who could be considered calm was Chen Hao. Such an outcome was both within and outside of his expectations. What he expected was that he had already determined that everyone was hiding something. What he did not expect was that the other party had hidden so much that even his speed that he was so confident in had lost. Chapter 1197. The last part of the foundation test is the endurance test. It's very simple. All testers will enter at the same time. The longer you last, the better your results will be. Whoever collapses last will be first. I'll give you 3 days to prepare and adjust to your best condition. This is a test of the physical body and soul. It's also the most important of the 3 foundation tests. Master Gu Chan's voice reverberated throughout the entire testing palace. The endurance test was a double test of the physical body and soul. The stronger the physical body and soul, the better the results. The strength of the soul did not just refer to the power of the soul. The most important thing was one's state of mind, willpower, and other ability to withstand pressure. These all originated from the soul. Compared to attack power and speed, which could be used to cast the law of the divine ability, the test was undoubtedly more fundamental and important. The stronger the endurance of the physical body and soul, the stronger the physical body and soul. This was the foundation of a cultivator and accounted for 40% of the results of the foundation test. Attack power and speed accounted for 30% respectively. Endurance, the first place will still be mine. Ling Feng looked confidently at Fatty, Xue Fian, and Ao Qian before slowly closing his eyes. To be able to cultivate the great change technique to the extreme, his physical body was naturally extremely strong. As for his soul endurance, it was needless to say. He had been cultivating under the old man's inhumane torture since he was young. His state of mind had long reached the state of being as kind as water, and his willpower was as strong as a rock. This was something that he was more confident in than the soaring Pegasus technique. In Ling Feng's opinion, the biggest competitors were Fatty, Xue Fian, and Ao Qian. The other prodigies had passed the test twice and were ignored by Ling Feng. Among the 3 of them, he was already aware of Fatty's situation. The great change technique and the special ability of his eyes had placed second in the previous 2 tests. His attack power, especially, should be number 1. He was definitely one of the strongest opponents. Xue Fian was also unfathomable. She had not revealed her true form until now, so naturally, she had not revealed her true strength. Ao Qian, who had concealed his aura, was the same. He and Fatty both used the great change technique. If they did not reveal their true forms, it would not affect their strength. Ling Feng did not know if Fatty was still hiding anything. He only knew that he had to treat this seriously. Otherwise, he would be despised to death by the old man. Go all out. Go all out. I don't believe that I won't be able to defeat you without revealing my identity. Ao Qian's fighting spirit soared as he howled in his mind. Then he focused his mind and entered a state of cultivation. In 3 days, he had to adjust himself to his strongest state. After Xue Fian heard Master Gu Chan's announcement, She did not have any expression at all and closed her eyes. Her disguise was too ordinary and did not have any beauty. Although the surrounding cultivators knew that this was definitely a super invincible genius beauty who had been occupied, they did not have the slightest interest in seeing this appearance. It'll be easier if they take the test together. We'll play it by ear. When Chen Hao heard teacher Gu Chan's explanation, he was in a good mood. Taking the test together meant that he did not have to expose too much in the dark. If he exposed too little, he might lose. If he exposed too much, it would be a waste. After all, he still hadn't gotten first place, so it was impossible for him to be arranged to be the last. But now, there was no such concern. No matter who it is, I, Lord Fatty, am still a little bit stronger than you. First place is mine. Her speed is also very ordinary. It's not even at the average standard. Yeah, her attack power is rubbish, her speed is rubbish, and her potential value is still below the baseline. The key is that her life aura is so old. She should be outstanding in other aspects, but that's obviously not the case. How could such a person be specially recruited? Isn't that obvious? That youthful appearance, that figure, and that primordial Yin body. It's not strange for her to be specially recruited, right? Many big shots are interested in this type of person. That's true. Brothers, let's communicate telepathically so that we won't be heard. Who knows which big shot took a fancy to her? Chi. Under the space-time laws, more than a month ago, when Shenhao's Daluo Golden Wonderland had just started the speed test, the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm area had also started the speed test around the same time. At this moment, the first person to appear was Si Xian, who had changed her name to Chen Si. Her gaze was as sharp as a sword, and her expression was solemn. Her aura was clearly at its peak, and she was giving it her all. However, just as the test began, there were countless discussions from the crowd. Although this was within Si Xian's expectations, when she actually faced it, she still couldn't accept it. In the chaotic, boundless universe, she was a proud daughter of the heavens, a legendary existence. However, when she came here, she became the target of ridicule and ridicule. When she first stepped into the assessment square, everyone saw her stunning appearance and sensed her life aura. They all thought that Si Xian, who had a very old life aura, must be very strong in other aspects. During the newcomers' arena battle, Si Xian's performance was very poor, and no one thought much of it, thinking that this stunning beauty was deliberately hiding her strength. However, after the foundation test began and everyone saw Si Xian's performance in the first attack power test, they didn't think so. Now, Si Xian's performance was speed. Although the results weren't out yet, everyone could tell that this result was at least rubbish to them. How could such a person be specially recruited? Naturally, it was attributed to Si Xian's stunning appearance that didn't age. When Si Xian heard such discussions after the attack power test, she was so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. However, she really did her best. Just like the speed test now, she used all her strength without holding back, but in the eyes of everyone, it was still very poor. Her potential value was a few points short of the benchmark of a first-rate academy. In fact, it wasn't Si Xian's true result, at least it wasn't her true result. This was because her age evaluation was based on her being much younger than the average Hongmeng Supreme Being. If it was her true age, her potential value would be the same as Qin Hao's and her initial estimation. At most, she would barely reach the benchmark of a second-rate academy. Entering a third-rate academy would be the most normal. But now, Si Xian had entered a first-rate academy, skipping 2 grades. Facing these geniuses, how could she compete? Pear Mountain was huge. The pressure and psychological pressure she had never felt before made Si Xian even more eager to improve herself. She didn't want to be despised by others, looked down upon by others, and wrongly accused of relying on the most useless method of being specially recruited. 642 points. Really rubbish, you can't even reach the benchmark of 1,000 points. Si Xian used all her strength and only lit up 642 points in the speed test. She was already very good, right? But in the eyes of the people around her, it was rubbish. Si Xian felt so wrong that she wanted to cry. Was it wrong to follow that damn fatty into a first-rate academy? That damn fatty situation should be much better. According to Master's estimation, he should be a relatively strong existence in a first-rate academy, and this is based on the time when he just stepped into the great world of Xiendi. Si Xian simply blocked her hearing and closed her eyes to adjust herself. She couldn't help but think of Chen Hao. Chapter 1198. Generally, cultivators from the vast thousand domains would improve very quickly after entering the great world of Xiendi for the first time. According to Yilan's judgment, Chen Hao, who was abnormally powerful, would be considered a genius in a first-rate academy even when he had just entered the great world of Xiendi. He would only need some time to adapt, and he would have no problem entering a top-notch academy. There was also something that Yilan had not mentioned to Chen Hao, the qualifications to walk the path of the Celestial Emperor. Phew! Si Xian shook her head slightly and heaved a long sigh in her heart. This was a world where true geniuses gathered. If she had come tens of millions of years earlier, she might have had a very strong competitive edge. Now, however, perhaps following Chen Hao to a first-rate academy was a mistake. This was not because Si Xian felt inferior, but because the gap between them was too big. It was not something that she could catch up to even if she worked hard. In such an environment, apart from the academy's most basic cultivation conditions, it would be difficult for her to even take a step forward. Although I've just entered and there's still a lot of room for improvement, it's still far from enough. I'll think about it after the assessment. After separating from Chen Hao, Si Xian finally realized the gap between herself and the disciples of first-rate academies as she faced the contemptuous and mocking gazes and words. She had said that she would not affect Chen Hao, but if she insisted on being with Chen Hao now, there would be a great impact. There was no doubt about that. Although she thought that after leaving Chen Hao, she would be very lonely and lost in this completely unfamiliar world. However, she had to consider this. Moreover, Chen Hao was only in the Daluo Golden Wonderland now. At most, he would have to go to the Hongmeng domain in a few thousand years. They would have to separate in the end. Begin. 5 days after Si Xian began the last test, the endurance test, Chen Hao also began. The cultivators who were on standby immediately turned into streams of light and rushed into the enchantment seal. When everyone was in position and in their respective test areas, a majestic and terrifying pressure of Tao law suddenly burst out, enveloping the entire test space. Qi. In Hongming's sovereign area, which had been going on for 5 days under the space-time laws, the first cultivator let out a horrified scream. He was the first to be eliminated. In the endurance test, once a cultivator lost control of their mind and lost their true self, or if their physical body was about to collapse, they would be ejected from the test area by the power of the spatial laws, ending the test. This was a limit that was set according to the cultivator's essence, spirit, blood, and qi. It was absolutely accurate, and not only could it truly measure the cultivator's tolerance limit, it could also protect the cultivator from harm. It's actually not Qinxi? 5 days later, when the first cultivator was eliminated, many cultivators were already on the verge of elimination. After all, most of the cultivators present were quite close to each other in terms of strength. However, what surprised many cultivators was that it wasn't Si Xian. In their estimation, Qinxi's attack power and speed were trash, so his endurance must be the worst as well. However, after persevering for 5 days, the first person to be eliminated was not Qinxi. The few experts who were still at ease looked at Si Xian from afar with a hint of surprise in their eyes. This was because, at this moment, regardless of whether it was Si Xian's physical body or soul, she appeared extremely calm. She did not show any signs of being unable to endure the increasingly heavy and terrifying pressure. Not even the slightest bit of pain appeared on her beautiful face that did not age. Strange. Her attack power and speed are so weak, and her endurance is the best indicator of a cultivator's strength and potential. She's actually so strong? On the 7th day, when more than 3,000 people had been eliminated, everyone was truly surprised by Si Xian's calm expression. At this moment, even the cultivators who had shown great strength in the first 2 tests more or less showed a hint of pain, but Si Xian was still as calm as ever. Strange, what's going on? Si Xian was also puzzled. At this moment, Si Xian only felt a little pain, and it didn't affect her foundation at all. However, more than 3,000 people had been eliminated one after another. Moreover, even the genius disciples who had shown great strength in the first 2 tests showed a pained expression at this moment. Clearly, they weren't as relaxed as her. This made Si Xian very puzzled. Could it be that her endurance was very strong? Not to mention others who didn't believe it, even Si Xian herself didn't believe it. Endurance was the double strength of the physical body and soul. It was the most fundamental thing. If one's speed and attack power were weak, one's physical body and soul couldn't be very strong. Naturally, one's endurance wouldn't be strong either. When the pressure marks were on my body, I still felt it, but it weakened instantly. Could it be? Could it be? Si Xian pondered and suddenly thought of a special existence in the great world in her mind. Mountain of corpses and sea of blood. It was engraved with Chen Hao's highest understanding of the 3 great immortal sutras and condensed the strongest emotions of countless cultivators on the verge of death. At the same time, when Chen Hao took Chen Shui and the others back after stepping out of the ancient chaos void, he gave Si Xian an unknown amount of terrifying emotional power to integrate into the mountain of corpses and sea of blood. That emotional power was the god's thought energy that Chen Hao had destroyed and devoured in the ancient chaos void. It's really it. After Si Xian carefully sensed it, she was shocked to find that the mountain of corpses and sea of blood was actually devouring the pressure of the Tao marks on her body on its own when she opened her mind. The churning blood, the piles of white bones, and the Tao marks of the 3 great immortal sutras were all operating on their own at this time. Terrifying emotional power filled it, as if it had given birth to its own consciousness, controlling the mountain of corpses and sea of blood to devour the pressure of the Tao marks on her body. How could this be? Could it be? Si Xian was truly shocked. If this mountain of corpses and sea of blood were to give birth to its own consciousness, wouldn't it be terrifying? Si Xian immediately thought of the soul of all things, Lu Hui. She definitely didn't think that she and Chen Hao, who had condensed the mountain of corpses and sea of blood, had the ability to give birth to its own consciousness. That was simply impossible. Their cultivation realm was the biggest restriction. However, the soul of all things and the reincarnation of an immortal emperor, Lu Hui didn't have such a restriction. I don't feel anything. While Si Xian was shocked, on the other side, Chen Hao, who had been testing for 2 days, felt the pressure of the entire test space getting stronger and stronger. It was very boring. At most, he felt that the heaven and earth spirit chi was getting denser and denser. This little bit of pressure really didn't make him feel anything. Passing the immortal sutra sacred land, experiencing thousands of years of experience in the ancient chaos void, and experiencing countless powerful God's thoughts, Chen Hao didn't feel anything at all for the past 2 days. At most, it was the level of scratching an itch. Chapter 1199. Similarly, when Chen Hao's endurance test had been going on for about 5 days, some cultivators began to be eliminated one after another. On the 7th day, almost half of them had been eliminated. On the 8th day, there were only 4 people left: Chen Hao, Ao Qian, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian. At this time, Si Xian's test had been going on for 13 days. In the entire testing space, there were only Si Xian and another genius who had won first place in the first 2 basic tests. This situation had been going on for a day. The others were all eliminated on the 12th day. By now, many cultivators who had looked down on Si Xian for having no other advantages other than her beauty had shut up obediently, although they still did not know why Si Xian's attack power and speed test results were so bad. Although they still did not understand, after all, a strong endurance meant that one's body, soul, state of mind, and will were very strong. Then, one's attack power and speed should not be bad. With Si Xian's endurance as a top genius, she should not have been so bad in the first 2 tests. On the 13th day, Si Xian could not hold on any longer and was ejected from the testing space. However, less than a minute after Si Xian was eliminated, another cultivator who was obviously in pain was also ejected. Obviously, after sensing that Si Xian was eliminated, This cultivator could not hold on any longer and was ejected from the testing space. This made Si Xian very happy because although this test was fake, it was only the first few days. When she found out that it was caused by the mountain of corpses and blood sea, she directly sealed the space in her mind and blocked the mountain of corpses and blood sea's active devouring. From then on, it was her own test. However, she had held on until now. She was second only to the strongest cultivator, who had obviously reached his limit as well. Without a doubt, this gave Si Xian a lot of confidence. She was not bad. It was just that she needed some time to uncover her real potential that she had not been able to use. It's been 13 days, she can really hold on. Ao Qian gritted his teeth and glanced at Chen Hao, Ling Feng and Xue Fian. Since the 11th day, only the 4 of them were left. Now, it had been 13 days, and none of them had been eliminated. What made Ao Qian even more anxious was that Brother Fatty, Ling Feng, and Xue Fian seemed to be very calm. Under the increasingly terrifying coercion and Dao laws, the 3 of them did not show any signs of pain. This was too freakish. One had to know that under normal circumstances, 13 days was the limit of all previous testers. After all, as long as others couldn't hold on, those geniuses who could still hold on wouldn't be able to hold on either. But this time, the 4 of them were actually evenly matched. Motherfucker, I'm afraid I can't take it anymore. Under the terrifying pressure of the Dao mark, Ao Qian felt that he was about to collapse. His mind was not functioning properly. This feeling was clearly on the verge of collapse. At this point, unless he released the sealed bloodline origin power, the first one to be eliminated would be him. There's still hope. It's better not to expose it now. After all, this is only the basic test, and it only accounts for 30% of the total score. Buzz. When this thought appeared, Ao Qian's consciousness suddenly blurred, and he was immediately ejected out of the testing area uncontrollably. Amazing, Ao Qian is amazing. 13 days and 7 hours. As far as I know, this is almost the result of the first place in the comprehension test of the University of Dehua. The moment Ao Qian was ejected, a few people from the Carnage Battle team quickly went to Ao Qian's side and praised him sincerely. Damn, Brother Fatty is still the best. Brother Fatty really hides his strength. He's too pretentious. His potential value is less than 1,000, but he's stronger than me in every aspect. Ao Qian said in a conflicted manner. This was the truth. Unless he exposed everything, he really couldn't compare to Fatty, who was a pretentious person. Very strong, very strong. With you and Brother Fatty, our Carnage Battle team will definitely be famous in the University of Dehua and even first-rate schools. Brother Ao, do you think Brother Fatty can get first place this time? I think Brother Fatty's expression is the most relaxed. It's hard to say. Ling Feng looks very pretentious. I can faintly feel that he's hiding his strength very deeply. Xue Fian is the direct prodigy of the University of Dehua. As for who she is, it's hard to guess. Look at the 3 of them, which one of them isn't calm? Damn it. I'll show you how strong I am in the ranking competition. Ao Qian said as he clenched his fists. His fighting spirit was rising. This Fatty really knows how to act. I can't hold on any longer. How can he be stronger than me? Xue Fian is getting more and more difficult to understand. Damn it. Ling Feng, who was sitting cross-legged, still had a faint smile on his face. However, traces of blood had begun to seep out of his pores. It was obvious that his physical body was about to reach its limit. However, his tyrannical soul, state of mind, and willpower were still agile. At this moment, Fatty's face also had traces of blood. However, his eyes were agile and he was extremely relaxed. From time to time, he would glance at Ling Feng and Xue Fian. The only one who didn't change was Xue Fian. She had disguised her appearance and aura. Until now, she hadn't even revealed her true body. Only the runes were becoming brighter and brighter. Her physical body had become an artifact. Moreover, it was an inheritance rune. Undoubtedly, it was extremely terrifying. Chen Hao and Ling Feng were both clear about this. Damn it. Am I going to lose to the 2 of them? Ling Feng felt more and more depressed as he sensed Chen Hao and Xue Fian's aura. His soul, state of mind, and willpower were all fine. The only problem was that his physical body was about to collapse. He had never thought of this before. After all, he had cultivated the great change art to its ultimate state. However, although Fatty was also bleeding, he seemed to be in a better state. As for Xue Fian, who had become an artifact with her physical body, Ling Feng didn't know how to judge. However, at this moment, Xue Fian, who was extremely calm and had not shown any signs of pain from the beginning until now, was directly ejected from the test space without any warning. This made Ling Feng and Chen Hao slightly stunned. Ah! The other cultivators also exclaimed in confusion. Could it be that her soul can't take it anymore? Her control is too strong. Until the end, her expression didn't change at all. Chen Hao couldn't help but exclaim. But, damn it! While Ling Feng was shocked by Xue Fian, he accidentally lost control of his physical body and primordial qi. Terrifying Dao mark pressure directly invaded his internal organs. At this moment, Ling Feng cursed out loud. Ha! You let me win, you let me win! However, Chen Hao stood up and laughed. With a twist of his fat butt, he flew out of the testing space. Chapter 1200. Brother Fatty, you shouldn't have come out. As soon as Chen Hao stepped out of the testing space, several members of the Carnage Battle team spoke to him telepathically. I'm already in first place. What's the point of staying in there? Chen Hao said nonchalantly. Brother Fatty, it's no use. The real deciding factor is your test results. The ranking is useless. Ranking is useless? The higher the ranking, the better the overall score. However, the real deciding factor is the attack power, speed, and endurance. The score is calculated according to the ratio of 30, 30, and 40. The final score of the 3 basic tests is based on the Daluo Golden Wonderland's basic tests. For example, if the attack power and speed are both 10,000 points, 30 points is the full score. Our score is based on the ratio of attack power, speed, and 10,000 points. The endurance score is 40 points, and we have to endure for 20 days. Damn. I understand now. Before Su Tao could finish his explanation, Chen Hao interrupted him speechlessly. He didn't even think about how the final score of the basic tests was calculated. He thought that the final score would be determined according to the rankings of the 3 tests and their actual combat power. He didn't expect that it would be related to the test records of the entire the great world of Xiandi. Xue Fian is definitely in first place in the basic tests. Chen Hao thought to himself. Xue Fian was ahead of him in terms of attack power, but the difference in speed was negligible. Similarly, there was no difference in endurance. Both of them finished within a minute, so there was no difference at all. The only difference was the ranking. The results in just 2 minutes proved Chen Hao's prediction. First place, Xue Fian 59. 1 points, attack power, 20. 5, speed 12. 0, endurance, 26. 6, second place, Chen Hao 56. 2 points, attack power, 17. 6, speed 12. 0, endurance, 26. 6, third place, Ling Feng 51. 0 points, attack power, 12. 0, speed 12. 4, endurance, 26. 6, fourth place, Ao Chen 50. 4 points, attack power, 12. 4, speed, 11. 4, endurance, 26. 6, the gap between Xue Fian's attack power allowed her to take the first place. It couldn't be helped. Chen Hao's ranking was higher than Xue Fian's in both speed and endurance. However, the difference in the number of star cores lit up in the speed test was only 0.003 points, so the difference was negligible. As for endurance, including Ao Chen, the 4 of them didn't exceed 10 minutes. It was also a difference that couldn't be reflected by the decimal point. Chen Hao was as fast as Xue Fian. Chen Hao's loss was due to his lack of attack power. Even though Chen Hao's attack power had been wronged, on a scale of 100 he can't even get 60 points. That's too weak. Looking at the final results, Chen Hao said with a pained expression. Fatty, this result is already one of the best in the top schools, not to mention the Dahua school. Those who can get 70 points and above are definitely geniuses in the top schools. Those who can get 80 points and above in the great world of CND are definitely less than 10,000 people in the Daluo Golden Wonderland. Those who can get 90 points and above are almost extinct. It's said that there hasn't been a single person who can get full marks since ancient times. It's that hard? Then why set such a high standard? This score is too shocking. Hearing Su Tao's words, Chen Hao said, Brother Fatty, if you understand the rules, then it's definitely over 60 points. You can increase your attack power by 4 points. Brother Fatty, how long can you last in the endurance test? Ao Qian couldn't help but ask. It's hard to say. When I came out, I was almost there. At most, I could last this long. Chen Hao looked at Ao Qian and narrowed his eyes. There was a proud smile on his fat face. He stretched out 3 fingers, then 5. 3 to 5 hours? Ao Qian asked. Fatty shook his head. 3 to 5 hours? Fatty shook his head again. 3 to 5 minutes. Brother Fatty, between us brothers, who doesn't know that you're hiding your strength? Moreover, looking at how relaxed you were, how could you only last for 3 to 5 minutes? Hearing Ao Qian's words, Chen Hao was stunned. Fuck, this IQ, I said 3 to 5 days, that's already very conservative. I don't dare to say anything else, but in terms of endurance, I can definitely last until 20 days. After all, I haven't felt anything from the test till now. Did I say 3 to 5 minutes? God, 3 to 5 days. Fatty stretched out his 5 fingers and looked at Ao Qian with disdain. Enough, Brother Fatty, you can't brag like that. We've already tested for 13 days. Not to mention 5 days, even 3 days is more than 16 days. Even the top geniuses in top schools wouldn't be able to do this. Don't think about hurting my confidence. Brother Fatty, don't mind the following ranking. I'll definitely beat you. Fuck. Chen Hao couldn't be bothered to say more. Not to mention Ao Qian, it seemed like the Carnage Blood and the others had the same thought. If he spoke the truth, no one would believe him. Once again, Chen Hao was shocked. What also made Chen Hao realize was that the so-called ranking competition wasn't the most direct confrontation between cultivators, but a test. In fact, it wasn't any different from the 3 basic tests. It was just a test of real combat strength. The test method was very simple. It was to enter the combat strength testing tower. Once a cultivator entered, all of their aura would be simulated and they would enter a realistic illusion. The so-called realistic illusion was a simulated environment that was completely similar to the outside world. It was similar to the fairyland space that the captain of the Carnage Blood battle team mentioned previously. However, it was simplified and used specifically to test one's combat strength. There are a total of 10 stages. In each stage, there will be 1,000 simulated cultivators with similar strength but different abilities and specialties. Killing one will give you 1 point. After killing all of them, you'll enter the next stage. Alright, the order of the test will start from the last in the basic test. Teacher Gu Chan quickly announced the start of the test. There is a 9-point difference in the basic test. The basic test accounts for 30% of the total score, which is equivalent to a difference of 7 points. The combat strength test accounts for 40% of the total score. In other words, I have to surpass 7 points in order to catch up with Xuefian. 7 points is equivalent to 700 simulated cultivators. I have to kill at least 700 more simulated cultivators than Xuefian to catch up. Damn, this is a little too big. First place, damn it, I might explode. Ao Qian's mind spun rapidly as he calculated the difference between himself and Xuefian, who was temporarily first. No matter how high one's potential value was, it wasn't calculated. After all, there were direct disciples with 1,000 points as well as cultivators who weren't satisfied with their potential value and wanted to retake the test. Therefore, the temporary ranking was only based on the results of the basic test. However, although Xuefian was first and gave Ao Qian a lot of pressure, the real first place was Fatty. The combat strength test was probably even higher. If Ao Qian didn't expose his bloodline aura, his chances of winning were very small. At the same time, Ling Feng also calculated the difference between him and Xuefian. He had to kill more than 600 simulated cultivators to catch up. Similarly, Fatty's threat was no less than Xuefian's. Chapter 12:01. When the first cultivator started the assessment, an image of the cultivator in the illusory reality appeared on the combat power tower. The entire battle process was clearly displayed before everyone's eyes. Unfortunately, he was eliminated by the simulated cultivator as soon as he stepped into the second stage. After that, hundreds of people remained at the second stage. At most, they killed 100 or so simulated cultivators before being eliminated. Their score was only a little more than 1,000 points. Although there were occasional anomalies, most of the combat power assessment points were directly proportional to the basic test results. The simulated cultivators in the second stage are twice as strong as those in the first stage. The simulated cultivators in the third stage are twice as strong as those in the second stage, and so on. This method of enhancement is very abnormal. Those who can enter the third stage in a first-rate academy are very strong, even if they don't get a single point in the third stage. The second stage is basically the limit of most of the cultivators in first-rate academies. Very few can enter the third stage, and only a handful can enter the fourth stage. Due to Fatty's ignorance of the great world of Xian Di, the members of the Carnage Battle team had become Chen Hao's instructor. Fatty bro, take a look. Although the strength of the 1,000 simulated cultivators in each stage is about the same, there is a huge difference in the attacking methods and other aspects that they specialize in. This can be ignored if your absolute strength is strong enough. But when the strength is about the same, you have to play to your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. Recognize your own advantages and kill the simulated cultivators that you can counter first. This way you can kill a lot more. Look, this simulated cultivator had no problem in the first stage. For the second stage, he specifically chose the area where the simulated cultivators were slow and had strong attacks. This is because his speed is his advantage. He can handle it with ease. Yes, I understand. Chen Hao naturally had to acknowledge his enthusiastic teammates. However, he could understand their long-winded analysis even if he used his butt to think. The combat power assessment has also started for the newcomers. The Great Luo Golden Immortal Realm and Grand Mist Supremacy Realm cultivators in front of the Great Luo Golden Immortal Realm and Grand Mist Supremacy Realm ranking pagoda steels exclaimed when they saw the new names appear. In the decennial rookie assessment, once a rookie completed the combat strength test and reached a basic value of 1,000, their name would appear on the ranking board. However, most of them were at the bottom of the rankings because the rankings were based on overall strength. The overall strength ranking consisted of 3 factors: combat power, potential, and contribution. The results of the 3 basic tests were not included. Combat power was basically a reflection of the 3 basic tests. At this moment, other than the combat strength value, the newcomer's potential value was still in a pending state, and his contribution value was 0. I heard that there are 2 experts in this year's Daluo Golden Wonderland. One of them is called Ling Feng, and his exposed potential value is around 2,300. He is definitely qualified to enter a top academy, and this is before he came to Dehua Academy. There's also one who defeated Wan Yishui in the arena. It can't be? Wan Yishui is one of the top experts in our Daluo Golden Wonderland. What do you mean by 300? Look again. He had actually reached 213? I clearly remember that it was more than 300. Previously, it was indeed more than 300. To be precise, it was 324. But the day before yesterday, Wan Yishui returned from his training, turned in the mission, and retested his combat strength. Look, just his combat strength increased by more than 800 points. With the increase in his contribution value, he directly rose by more than 100 ranks. Such rapid improvement is the result of his crazy hard work after being defeated by a newcomer. Who defeated him? It's indeed a very embarrassing thing. A fatty called Li Yuan. Just wait and see. Wan Yishui returned at this time, naturally to get back at him. He Ming, who chased Wan Yishui for more than 3,000 years without success, said that he would wait for Fatty Li Yuan to come out and challenge him to help Wan Yishui vent her anger. It said that Fatty Li Yuan was rather wretched and didn't rely on his real combat strength to rise to Wan Yishui's rank. Furthermore, he even took liberties. But, HM? The cultivator who was speaking saw his companion winking at him and asked in confusion. But just as he said the word, he suddenly turned his head to the right. Cough, cough. Not far away, Wan Yishui sat cross-legged, his eyes cold. Beside Wan Yishui were He Ming and other members of the same team. He Ming, I'm not someone who's looking for trouble. I'm definitely forced to challenge him. A figure beside He Ming said directly. You want to die? The ashen-faced He Ming finally raised his hand and pointed at the cultivator who was talking about him and Wan Yishui, roaring. Many of the cultivators who were also talking immediately shut their mouths. There was never a lack of cultivators at the ranking pagoda. Under normal circumstances, cultivators who had just completed a mission would come here. There were also cultivators who had retested their combat strength or potential value, and specially came here to see the change in their ranking. And now, during the once-in-a-decade newcomer assessment, there were also many cultivators who specially came to see the situation of the newcomers. They were looking for Dao companions, battle team members, and so on. Wan Yishui and He Ming were obviously here to see the situation of the newcomer assessment, or it could be said that they were waiting for the fatty to come out. Cough, cough. Sorry, I've only heard rumors. Brother I'm sorry, scram. Goodbye. The person who spoke hurriedly left in a sorry state. Although in the academy, He Ming didn't dare to do anything to him and couldn't do anything to him, he didn't dare to offend an expert like He Ming. There were many ways to mess with him. Yishui, you heard it too. Even if you can easily bully that damn fatty, you'll still get yourself into trouble. Why don't you let me help you vent your anger? After seeing the other person leave dejectedly, He Ming couldn't flare up. He turned to look at Wan Yishui, who was sitting cross-legged, and transmitted his voice. He Ming, I said that you don't need to care about my matters. That damn fatty, I'll definitely teach him a lesson with my own hands. Wan Yishui frowned and said, also, He Ming, I won't be renewing my contract with the Battle Team and Big Words Academy. After the Millennium Academy ranking competition, I'll leave. I know. Me too. When the time comes, let's go to the Hongming region together. He Ming, why don't you understand what I mean? Do you have to say it directly? You don't have to say it, I understand. But isn't it too early to say it now? You didn't accept me before, nor did you reject me. Are you sure that I won't be as good as you in the future? I think it's too early. When the time comes, we'll enter the Hongming region together and make a decision after we come out. After all, whether it's me or our battle team, we've been together for so long. When we enter the Hongming region, there are no laws to protect us. How can we do it without a partner? What do you think? Don't worry, I won't force you. We'll be friends for the time being, just like the others, He Ming said. Wan Yishui looked at He Ming and finally nodded. This batch of cultivators is very strong. So strong. There are still 400 people, and their combat power is close to 2,000. How can we not know the experts? As a whole, they're definitely the strongest batch in tens of thousands of years. Chapter 1202. Based on what we know, the expert is at least comparable to Wan Yishui. That's true. It's said that Li Yuan, who defeated Wan Yishui, was specially recruited by the pavilion master of the true martial pavilion. His soul and state of mind are very strong, and he cultivated the great teleportation technique to the peak of the Daluo Golden Wonderland. He completely relied on his speed and state of mind to exhaust Wan Yishui to death, not his battle strength. That's what the rumors say. However, if an expert like Wan Yishui could be controlled by him and exhaust his energy, would he be as simple as he seems? That's true. Let's see, the results will be out soon. We only need to look at Li Yuan's battle strength and his ranking among the newcomers to know the situation of this batch. Following the progress of Chen Hao and the others' battle strength test, the cultivators in front of the Daluo Golden Wonderland's ranking tower in the plaza outside the University of Dahua's testing center couldn't help but buzz in discussion. When there were only 400 cultivators left, the battle strength of the testers was already close to 2,000 points. This also meant that the next 400 people would all be existences with more than 2,000 points. After all, everyone knew that the order of the test was based on the results of the basic test from the weakest to the strongest. 400 existences with a battle strength of more than 2,000 points. In terms of overall quality, this batch was definitely a batch that Dahua Academy had not seen in 10,000 years. If a few more top experts appeared, it would be even more shocking. 1994, 2003, 1999, 2014, 2011, 2021, 2025. The difference in the laws of space and time caused a newcomer's name to appear on the ranking tower outside the testing center in a few seconds. As everyone expected, the battle strength of the testers quickly exceeded 2,000 points. Although there were fluctuations, the overall battle strength was still slowly increasing. Moreover, when it increased to around 2,100 points, it didn't increase much anymore. It hovered around this level. This situation was also within everyone's expectations. The further a cultivator went, the harder it was to increase their battle strength. Moreover, it would get closer and closer to a benchmark. The overall situation of steadily increasing was basically impossible. This was because 2,100 points was definitely the limit of the upper standard in a first-rate academy. If it didn't fluctuate by a few points, then it would be a top genius who broke through this threshold, directly surpassing a few hundred points to 3,000 points or even 4,000 points. It was extremely rare for someone to have a combat power value of over 4,000 points in a first-rate academy. It was hard to come across one in a million years or even 10 million years. 2152, 2139. 2,841. Seventh from the bottom, direct disciple. Experts are here, 7 of them. Ling Feng and Li Yuan haven't appeared yet. Li Yuan is really strong. When one of the 4 direct descendant geniuses finished his test, his name, battle prowess, and background appeared on the ranking pagoda in the outside world, causing a commotion. This also allowed everyone to determine the number of top experts in this batch of testers. Direct descendant disciples would appear in every batch of admission tests. More than 10 of them had appeared in the previous tests, but it was only now that a true genius with an interception mission had appeared. Unfortunately, this person clearly failed to stop the famous Ling Feng and Li Yuan. The information about the direct descendants was unlike Chen Hao, Ling Feng, and the others, who had gone through the arena battles and had long since spread the news. They had only entered when the test had begun. The cultivators outside only knew that the 4 direct descendant geniuses had appeared and the total number of people who had taken the test. Moreover, Li Yuan's name hadn't appeared yet, which was enough to explain one thing. In the foundation test, Li Yuan's results were in the top 6. How could his battle prowess be weak? The foundation test was the same as the college entrance exam results. The most taboo was a crippled examinee. If a crippled examinee was held back, the consequences would be very serious. Damn fatty. Wan Yishui clenched her teeth and took a deep breath as she thought to herself. She wasn't surprised that the fatty had entered the top 6 in the foundation test. Wan Yishui wasn't surprised at all by this result. To be more precise, when she had just finished her battle with Chen Hao, she was already very clear about it. Others didn't know, but she knew that during the arena battle, the wretched and shameless fatty was only playing with her. In the voice transmission, he had sung, "Find some free time, find some time, let this Lord Fatty play with you." Those extremely teasing, wretched, and shameless words. This Lord Fatty's first pleasure in life is to play with little sisters like you, rolling around the sheets and whatnot. The first style of the chain divine technique, but divine technique. With a push of my butt, I can sit on all the beauties in the world. The second style, golden spear does not fall. With a thrust of my spear, I can gallop through thousands of valleys and caves. Even now, Wan Yishui still remembered it clearly. At that time, Chen Hao dared to use the voice transmission to tease her. In addition, when he used the but divine technique to press down, it carried a terrifying power and imposing manner. How could she, who had deeply felt it, not know that Chen Hao had played her and won over her? No matter how strong you are, this time, I will definitely let you, this damn fatty, know the consequences of teasing me. Wan Yishui clenched her fists tightly. Her fine black hair fluttered imperceptibly for a moment, and an extremely profound fluctuation flashed and disappeared in an instant. Azure Silk Jade Ripple Technique. The improvement of the Azure Silk Jade Ripple Technique was her true improvement. It's actually not there yet? I want to see how much it is. When He Ming saw that the name that appeared again was still not Fatty Li Yuan, his brows furrowed and formed a Chuan character as he thought to himself. 2989. A few seconds later, the sixth from the back, and it was still a direct descendant disciple's battle power value appeared. Unfortunately, it still couldn't break through the 3,000 limit. Damn fatty, it's your turn, right? Almost 3,000 points. That year when I first took the assessment, I had a high score of 3,123 points. That batch's second place, with a slight difference in total points, lost to the direct descendant disciple. He Ming thought to himself, to be able to surpass my preliminary assessment results, you have the ability. 3,000 points was a checkpoint. This was something that He Ming was very clear about. 3,123 points seemed to be a little more than 2,900 points, but the difference was like a natural chasm. Voila, and fuck. Just as He Ming was secretly competing with Chen Hao, a sudden clamor came from the surroundings, attracting He Ming's gaze. When he saw the female cultivator who caused such a huge commotion, He Ming's pupils suddenly shrank. Beautiful, an unrivaled beauty. Purely in terms of figure, appearance, and temperament, this was definitely the most beautiful woman that He Ming had ever seen. Even if one's heart already belonged to someone, seeing such an unrivaled beauty, which normal man would not be moved? What an old aura. What a pity. Strange. She doesn't look old? A newcomer from the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm, why are you here to look? The person who came was none other than Si Xian. The Grand Mist Supremacy Realm's assessment had just ended, and all the cultivators walked out of the assessment square, but almost everyone walked towards the Grand Mist Supremacy Realm's ranking pagoda. However, Si Xian went directly to the Daluo Golden Wonderland's pagoda with a hint of nervousness and anticipation. Her eyes were shining brightly as she quickly scanned the names one by one. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.